Good morning and welcome to the Infrastructure Committee. You're very welcome. I'll just take through some of the standard stuff that we do. Today our committee will receive oral evidence from the Minister for Infrastructure on her department's priorities. We will consider written evidence from the Department for Infrastructure on its 5-year sustainability plan. We will consider written evidence from the Department for Infrastructure on the spring supplementary estimates. We will consider legal advice on the committee's remit in respect of the practices of private car parking in recovering unpaid car parking charges and the potential for review, and consider 2 proposals, SL1s, for statute rules that are subject to assembly procedure and 1 not subject to assembly procedure. Those in public gallery, you're very welcome. You can use mobile devices, but I would remind you that you're not allowed to take recordings or photographs. And if members are content, I will then proceed through the agenda. And item 1 is apologies. Are there any apologies? I see full attendance here. You would nearly think a minister is attending committee this morning, so I don't believe there are any apologies. Item 2 is declarations of interest. Any members have any interest to declare, they can do it now or they can do it as the items come up. Some members have previously declared interests. Does anyone have anything they want to declare today? Cahill.
Chair, you have family who works in the road service, so just in case there's any issues, obviously, discussion in relation to that matter, yeah.
That's fine. Anyone else? Okay, that's it. And item 3 is the departmental update and current issues. At page 7 we have the Minister for Infrastructure briefing paper. At page 9 we have the official report, ministerial priorities and legislative programme. And tabled at page 3 we have the clerk's brief and the attendance of the Minister at committee. I would like to welcome the Infrastructure Minister, Liz Kimmins, to committee, and flanked by her Permanent Secretary, Declan McGowan. And I would like to seek committee agreement that this session is recorded by Hansard. Are committee agreed? Agreed. And then I would like to invite the Minister to make an opening statement of up to 10 minutes. After that, Minister, as you will probably be aware, members will ask some questions. Just before you start that, it would be good if we could maximise the time that we have with you this morning, so if you could keep your answers as brief and as to the point as you could, that would be very useful. But apart from that, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Chair, and good morning to everybody here today. I'm delighted to be back at committee. I've now been in post just over a year, as members will be aware, and it's my 3rd time coming before most of you all, some new faces from the last time I was here. So I'm really glad to be here, and I hope we can maximise the time to talk about the many key issues that the department is dealing with. As Minister for Infrastructure, I've had the pleasure of meeting a wide range of people who have a genuine interest in growing our economy, protecting our environment, and most importantly, improving our communities. And those are the ambitions that I share, and I'm privileged to be Infrastructure Minister because, as we all know, infrastructure underpins all that we do and holds the key to creating the type of society that we all want to live in. Today I'm going to focus on what my department has delivered since I was last at the committee, and also look forward to what we plan to deliver in the coming months. However, I want to start by paying tribute to my staff and the staff of NI Water and TransLink. You will all recall on the 26th of January we saw Storm Chandra, which recorded wind speeds of 75 plus miles per hour and widespread heavy rainfall. In fact, the Met Office has stated that January 2026 was the wettest January in 149 years in the north and the 2nd wettest on record. During that week we saw the rainfall on already saturated ground, leading to flooding in various locations throughout the north. And this has resulted in flooding on land, in some people's homes, and even impacting on the Belfast to Dublin railway line. I know properties in Antrim were particularly badly affected, and something I saw for myself when I visited Riverside and met with residents there. And overall, the impacts of the flooding would, however, have been much worse had it not been for the work of my department and the multi-agency partners involved. The department has well tried and tested emergency plans for situations like this, and it activated its major emergency response plan. So I particularly want to pay tribute to the staff who worked outside day and night throughout this time in very challenging weather conditions. They are out in the front line bringing assistance in the worst of weather, leaving their families and ordinary day-to-day work to deliver public services to our people. And I'm sure the committee will join me in thanking them for their service and commitment during this time. Unfortunately, extreme weather events like this are becoming increasingly common here, and that's why my department is delivering key schemes to help alleviate these incidents. This year already, I've completed the £33 million Belfast Tidal Flood Alleviation Scheme, invested $430,000 in a flood alleviation scheme on the Elmwood Green Stream, Castlederg, advanced works on the £60 million Portadown Flood Alleviation Scheme, which when completed will reduce the risk of river flooding to over 380 homes. And we've increased the grant funding threshold for the Homeowner Flood Protection Grant Scheme. So looking forward, I'm also progressing the development of a flood forecasting centre with the outline business case due to be completed in the coming months, and I anticipate that the Newry Phase 2 flood alleviation scheme will begin later this year. One of the areas I'm also keen to work with the committee on is the further commencement of the Reservoir Act NI 2015, and I know the committee has been involved in scrutinising the secondary legislation and has been awaiting the results of the consultation on grant support for initial inspection costs. You will shortly receive the consultation report that confirms grant support for initial inspections for reservoir managers in the private and not-for-profit sector, and I hope this will assist the committee in its deliberations, as I'm committed in advancing this important public safety work as quickly as possible. I can't stress enough how vital this legislation is further commenced in this mandate, given the scale of flood risk from controlled reservoirs in the north. One of the key challenges for the department has undoubtedly been the need to find solutions to rectify decades of underinvestment in our wastewater network, and I know this is something the committee has been discussing with various organisations. I've been working in partnership with key water stakeholders to find innovative ways to unlock this wastewater capacity by finding localised solutions. And for example, last summer I secured an additional $11 million to help unlock wastewater capacity in Derry, which has enabled over 3,000 new wastewater connections for the city over the next 2 to 3 years. This followed on from the £19 million my predecessor had previously secured, unlocking over 2,000 properties at that time. Indeed, over the past 18 months, my department has then unlocked over 5,300 properties across the north, which has already exceeded the target set by the utility regulator of 4,500 during the PC21 period, and we're only in 2026. Even without significant increased funding, we have also achieved numerous localised successes, including unlocking more wastewater capacity in Newry. And encouragingly, the second quarter of 2025 saw the highest number of new house starts since 2018, with 2,000 new houses starting to be built and construction output also reaching a 15-year high. I'm determined to continue to work with NI Water to find local solutions to these issues, whilst also delivering on my three-pronged approach, while seeking all opportunities at the Executive for additional capital money. This year will also see further work undertaken on allowing developers to voluntarily contribute to local wastewater networks, which will help them to build much needed houses. At the same time, work will continue on progressing the Water Sustainable Drainage and Flood Management Bill, which will help reduce pollution by removing excess water from the network by storing it in sustainable drainage systems, also known as SUDs. One of the areas that I know a number of business organisations have proposed is the idea of introducing an infrastructure levy on top of household rates. Any decision to apply an additional levy to rates bills would be a cross-cutting matter to be considered by the Executive, and substantive changes would need to be made to rating legislation and the rating administration system in respect of such a change. However, for the avoidance of doubt, for me this represents a form of water charge, and so I will not be proposing an infrastructure charge is added to household rates and increasing to the financial burden already faced by people here by imposing any form of water charges. I've often talked about the three-pronged approach, and this is about looking at what else we can do in different ways. It's about looking at natural drainage solutions through the bill, which is currently coming through the Assembly. And importantly, it's also about lobbying executive ministers to secure additional funding, as well as allowing developers to play their part where they can to unlock local drainage solution in local areas. The committee will also be aware that road safety remains a key commitment of mine. Last year, sadly, saw 56 people killed on our roads, and we're all too aware of the lives which have been lost within the past 2 months, indeed in the last week. Too many people are dying on our roads, and something that has been brought into sharp focus by this awful news in recent days, and including just yesterday when we saw a young man killed following Monday night's collision on the A5. Every single death on our roads is a profound loss to the community and to the families and friends of those who've lost a loved one. And that's why I'm determined to undertake a range of measures to continually improve road safety across the north. So I look forward to seeing the public feedback on the consultation on the review of speed limits, which launched last month. This is aimed at improving road safety, as speed is a significant causation factor for collisions. And the consultation is still live, and I would encourage as many people as possible to have their say and feed into the consultation. In the meantime, I'm also taking forward a range of measures to improve road safety, including the delivery of the third tranche of part-time 20-mile-per-hour zones across 40 schools, bringing the total delivered to 273 schools. I approved a budget allocation of almost £2 million for road safety promotion for the 2025-26 financial year. And earlier this year, I launched a new anti-drug driving advertising campaign along with a school bus safety campaign. 2 new hard-hitting advertisements to address speeding and driver behaviour are being finalised and are due to go live in the next 2 weeks. Just a few weeks ago, the committee will know, I launched the graduated driver licensing scheme, and we're the first region across these islands to introduce such a scheme, which is the most significant reform to driver licensing and testing in almost 70 years. This scheme is designed to reduce the disproportionate involvement of new, primarily young drivers in fatal and serious road traffic collisions. This age group accounts for 24% of fatal or serious collisions, despite holding just 8% of licences. And I believe the committee will later on in today's meeting have the chance to commence their consideration and scrutiny of the package of SL1s needed to facilitate the introduction of GDL, and I'd value your input into this important matter. In my role as Minister, I've met with families of victims of road traffic collisions on a regular basis, and heard the harrowing stories of loved ones who are no longer with us as a result of these collisions. And I've promised to do everything within my power and within my time as Minister to improve road safety. As part of this commitment, I've established the Safer Journeys to School programme to ensure we're doing everything possible to protect children on their daily routes to school. And I hope the committee can see that I'm delivering on these promises, and I thank the committee for their support on our combined efforts to reduce the number of people killed or seriously injured on our roads. I'm also determined to do everything possible to deliver on road safety through the development of new and upgraded roads, and the AF5 remains a key commitment for me, and I look forward to hearing the outcome of the current legal appeal. And whilst the AF5 has huge strategic importance with the potential to tackle regional imbalance, improve the economy and connect communities, it is above all about saving lives, and I hope that we can all keep that at the forefront of our minds. I'm also very aware of the debate around the current condition of our road network, especially around the growing number of potholes and defects in our roads that have developed during the exceptionally wet period this winter. And like our wastewater network, this issue can be traced back to the constant underinvestment in our network over many, many years. And I can reassure the committee that I take this issue very, very seriously. You'll be aware that yesterday I was able to announce a further £2.5 million for essential roads maintenance in this financial year. This is an investment of over £40 million since December in our roads, and this extra money is in addition to the £7.85 million Winter Recovery Road Fund and the 40 resurfacing schemes programmed following the £30 million December monitoring allocation. I've asked officials to explore, as a matter of urgency, over recent months, every avenue to maximise our available workforce capacity to ensure we're doing as much as we can. Following engagement with our contractors, we have secured additional capacity which will allow us to carry out essential repairs across our road divisions. Recent storms, prolonged rainfall, ice and snow have all taken their toll on the roads, with 49,000 defects being recorded in the last 3 months alone, which is close to half the total for the whole of the previous year. And this is something that we see year on year. However, it's important that we try and deal with it and get ahead of it for the time ahead. The Winter Recovery Road Fund, which now stands at over £10 million, will allow vital repairs to the worst affected areas to be carried out in a focused way and be completed as soon as possible. And I want to raise the issue of the standard of maintenance across the network in a long-term sustainable way. That is why in December I launched the new road maintenance strategy. As part of this process, I've commissioned a full digital road survey of all the roads in the north using advanced AI and HD imaging. Every road will be captured and used to identify and prioritise urgent maintenance to address defects such as potholes. In practice, this means filling 1 or 2 In practice, this means instead of filling one or two potholes and skipping over others, there will be more patch resurfacing, and when this is done, repairs will last longer because they will be better quality. I'm committed to raising the standard of maintenance across the network, ensuring that interventions are timely, durable and delivered to consistently high specifications. This will reduce long-term costs, improve user experience and enhance safety. So whilst the strategy and survey will provide greater detail to inform strategic decision making, this will continue to be supported by reporting of potholes and defects via the online portal. And I want to thank all of the public and all of the elected reps for their continued work to ensure that my department has the most information possible to try and deal with this as quickly as possible. Maintenance staff will also continue to inspect and make safety checks in accordance with our policy to help ensure the safety of the travelling public. Another key area of delivery for me is active travel, and I'm committed to increasing investment in active travel across the north and recognise its benefits to the lives of people who want greater choice in how they travel, particularly for shorter everyday journeys. This year has seen progress made in a number of projects, including the delivery of schemes in Lagmore Avenue, West Belfast Greenway Phase 1, as well as the commencement of the £430,000 active travel scheme for Cookstown. Consultants have also recently been commissioned to advance a further 6 major active travel schemes for the department, and looking forward, I intend to bring forward more active travel schemes, as well as continuing to provide grant funding to local councils to support the delivery of greenways and other active travel initiatives. We've made significant advances in our public transport network over the last year, including the full opening of Grand Central Station, the introduction of night buses in Belfast, and the hourly train services between Belfast and Dublin, and I'm delighted that this new enterprise service has seen a 40% increase in passengers using it since it was introduced in autumn 2024. And there's recently been an additional 30,000 journeys on late night train and bus services this year. This work, along with extensive stakeholder engagement and initiatives like the extension of bus lanes and bringing forward the roadworks embargo, helped to improve access to Belfast city centre, especially at Christmas, when we did not see a repeat of the traffic congestion experienced the previous year.
Minister, I think you've had about your 10 minutes there. I'm not sure.
No I was just coming to the end. Anyway, Chair,
is that okay?
That's fine, no problem.
But thank you for that, and a lot of key areas you went through there that I am pretty confident committee members will pick up on as we go through. I'm going to start standard for this committee, that I'll hand over to John, and then we have a list that's already being formulated up here, and I'm going to keep an eye on my own time and then committee members, so we try and get through everyone during this session. Minister, the first thing I want to pick up on is something that the committee's been very interested in, probably dating back a couple of months, and that is around billboards in your own area. So my question really is, Minister, are you aware of any illegal billboards currently in the Newry area on DFI land?
Well, I mean, there's issues with advertising and signage all over the north, not just on DFI land. There's we see this all the time. This issue has been well discussed, well debated. We have talked about it repeatedly through assembly debates, through question time, through written questions, through correspondence, and I have continued to answer those questions. So, as I've said, every erection of advertising or signage is assessed through the department within the boundaries of the public road, and under the Article 87 of the roads order, which gives the department discretionary powers to look at whether the removal is appropriate, and we've talked about this to date. So, I mean, there are lots of examples everywhere, I think, and we could really go down a rabbit hole if we needed to, but priority is always given to those any erections of signage or whatever it may be that are causing a safety hazard, and where they are reported or where they are picked up by the department, they are assessed.
So I'm going to ask you that question again, Minister, because you didn't answer it the first time. Are you aware of any illegal billboards currently in the Newry area on DFI land?
Well, what I'm saying is that there's examples all over the north, so it's not just specific to Newry. I'm sure there's lots of things erected everywhere. So I'm not too sure how much clearer I need to be in relation to that.
Okay. I'm not sure you answered that, but as part of your departmental briefing for an urgent oral on the Tuesday 20th of January, under topic 4, just ask if you agree to this, that you were advised that there was other advertising in the Newry area. Did you read that briefing, and are you aware of that fact? You're advised as such. Topic 4, page 11 of your briefing.
Well, I don't have the brief in front of me, but I'm assuming if it was in there, then that was noted.
Okay. We know, according to FOIs, that there were a number of illegal billboards in Newry erected. Do you know who owned them or who put them up? You know the FOIs that I'm referring to, and also some correspondence your department sent to us?
So my understanding is anything that had been referred to through correspondence was removed, and I stated that very clearly in the debate in the Assembly. Okay.
And the ones that I'm referring to from the letter on the 25th of November are adverts containing the Sinn Féin logo in these locations: Armagh Road, Rathfarnham Road, William Street, Bridge Street, Camlock Road. Were you aware of those?
Well, my understanding is that they have all been removed. Whatever has been there. So
okay, but they were adverts advertising Sinn Féin. Is that fair enough to say?
I'm assuming so, if that's what the correspondence says.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Gowan, turning to another issue along a similar line. Between 2023 and 2025, was there an illegal billboard in place at Egyptian Arch?
Well, I mean, we've talked about this in the Chamber repeatedly, and I have said clearly that whatever posters, billboards were there were since removed, and that was that has been confirmed. So I wasn't minister in 2023, nor do I have any part in putting billboards up or putting posters up. It's not something I do in my for a pastime. But as I've said, anything that has been there has since been removed.
Okay, that's fine. Do you know who owned the billboard between 2023 and 2025? Do you have any knowledge of that?
Who owned the billboard? Well, I would say there was billboards there with Sinn Féin logos on, and we've talked about this. So that billboard has since been removed, and I mean, and as I've said, the department wrote out at the time. There's correspondence in November that all of that has been now removed. So
okay, so it was during that period. It was a Sinn Féin billboard. Is that fair to say?
Well, if there was a Sinn Féin logo on it, I'm assuming that there was a Sinn Féin billboard there. Okay. We have discussed this.
And would you accept now that billboard was erected illegally? Is that fair to say?
Well, the department have indicated that in their correspondence, so that is an assessment by the department.
Okay. So the reason I raised that with you is that this has been talked about at the committee, and you referred to it in terms of what we have talked about in the Assembly. And there is clearly a feeling amongst some constituents and members of this committee that somehow for 2 years, your party erected a billboard and nobody took it down, and it's sat there. And in fact, it actually was there until this committee started to look into it, and then suddenly it changed, and then suddenly the advertising came off it completely. I suppose in rounding up my questioning on this particular issue, would you agree that it seems that in this situation, your party was put up a billboard without planning permission, and other people in Northern Ireland would look at that and go, well, why can't I do stuff without planning permission? Do you see the two-tierness of that? Would you accept that at all?
Oh. As I said in the debate, I think there's a discussion here on one single item. Let's have the discussion across the board, because I think there are numerous examples everywhere. I think that there is scope to look at how we deal with things like this going forward in terms of regulation and how that is addressed. What I am saying is the issue we are talking about is in the past. It has been dealt with, and as far as I'm concerned, it has concluded.
So I'll finish my line on this one, but I had a women's group in my constituency contact me whenever they heard about this, and they wanted me to read this out whenever they heard about what they called the Sinn Féin Egyptian Arch billboard saga. They wanted to take some grills off the outside windows in the preschool nursery that they had. They were told they needed to get planning permission for it, and elevation drawings just to take the grills off. That in itself costs more than the work of taking those grills off. And it seems to me that there's a lot of people in Northern Ireland, a lot of constituents, in this case a preschool nursery, who are playing by the rules, but there is a perception, and you are responsible for planning enforcement in Northern Ireland, everyone knows that actually there's a level of two-tierness to what we have seen. Other committee members may pick it up, but I want to use my final few minutes to turn to something else, which is what we would class as probably the wastewater crisis. Minister, are you concerned about the house price rises that we're seeing in Northern Ireland, and do you know how much they're going up by year on year?
Well, I think what we've seen is a number of factors that have impacted on house prices for some time. I think when you look at even PC21 and the costs of delivering PC21 have increased by 85% since 2021. So that in itself is indicative of the environment that we're operating in terms of cost. So increases in cost in house prices can't, I don't think, be purely underpinned by wastewater infrastructure. I think there's a number of factors. We have seen COVID, we've seen cost of living, which has impacted on the cost of materials. And I know from speaking to people on a daily basis, for anyone doing any sort of work, even minor work to their homes, they have seen significant cost rises. So yes, I am aware we're seeing that. This is something we're seeing right across the board. Indeed, when you look at a comparison of the price of a house in the south of Ireland, it's almost double what people are looking at here. That's not to say that that's not an issue. Of course it's an issue, and we'll all work hard to address that across the executive. I think from a wastewater perspective, as I'm assuming that's the direction you are going in relation to this. I mean, I've outlined in my opening remarks the work that has been done both by myself and my predecessor to do all within our power to try and ensure that we're getting investment into our wastewater infrastructure to continue to keep progress moving.
Thank you for that. Just to make you aware, and this was raised by me yesterday during the budget debate, house prices in Northern Ireland are going up by 9.7% year on year. That's 10 times, Minister, the rate in London, and only 0.3% less than the rate in the Republic, which everyone would admit is in a level of housing crisis. Build Homes, NI, has said that completion rates are at a 60-year low in Northern Ireland, around 6,000 a year. The Chartered Institute of Housing yesterday said that new home starts in Northern Ireland have fallen to their lowest levels since 2023, and they specifically warned of a deepening wastewater infrastructure crisis. Minister, do you accept that there is a crisis and that you don't yet have a handle on how to deal with that?
Well, as I also said in my opening remarks, and I think you've made some comments or I've referred to some quotes, my understanding is that we've seen a 15% rise in construction since 2018. We have, by the end of September 2025, there was 4,211 new dwellings completed, and 5,549 new starts. So it would be important to just cross-reference both quotes, because certainly my understanding is that we've seen an upturn. I am not suggesting that it's something to be championed, because I know that there's still a lot more work to do, but I think it's contrary to some of the points that you've outlined. I do think that housing is not responsibility solely for my department. My department is responsible in terms of wastewater infrastructure, but we work very closely with the Department for Communities, with DERA, with NI Water and others to try and find solutions and work collaboratively, and we have been able to do that, particularly on localised solutions. So, and I've spoken about some of those in my opening remarks as well. That's what we continue to do.
I'm nearly at the end of my time here, Minister, so I'll make one more comment, ask one more question, and that will be me, and I'm going to try and stick to my own rules. The percentage rise you quoted actually is interesting, because that will naturally rise. Construction will naturally rise in Northern Ireland because your department got the largest budget settlement ever in terms of capital for any department in Northern Ireland very, very recently. So construction's rising, and that's the basis of that figure. What I'm saying is that the actual number of houses being built, and because of the wastewater crisis, is that is being there's contraction there. The CEF have also stated in evidence that the legislative prong on the bill effectively won't deal with an ongoing wastewater crisis. Writing over the weekend, McFeelty and Clogher O'Toole said that Northern Ireland doesn't have a housing problem, it has a systemic infrastructure failure that is pricing an entire generation out of the market. And I know that a lot of people feel that, and they will feel it increasingly because of our wastewater crisis and a 10% year-on-year increase in housing. Are you concerned about young families or young people who are trying to buy houses and they can't because they're being priced out of the market? And the reason that that's happening is because of the wastewater crisis, and your department ultimately is responsible for managing that process. Do you think that's fair?
I think that's something that we all should be concerned about, be it everyone in this room, but also particularly across the executive. You've said there that it's solely as a result of the wastewater challenges. I don't agree with that. I think
I didn't say solely. But you said it.
But you use that as the reason for this. That is not the reason for it. It is a factor in the challenges that we face. And you also talked about the capital allocation to the department. I think, in the last mandate, the Minister also got the highest capital allocation ever. Does that mean that it's going to deal with all the problems? Absolutely not. It's nominal. I mean, if for people that see an inflationary increase in their salary year on year, does that mean that they can all of a sudden buy a lot more? No, it doesn't. It means that it's rising in line with the cost of everything else around them. So I think it's okay to get a headline and say DFI have got the biggest capital allocation ever. Why have we got problems? That's not realistic. You have to drill into it and look at what exactly can you spend and what can you deliver with the budget you're given. What I have set out to do, and what I've done with working with my executive colleagues, is look at how we can maximise the benefit we can deliver for that capital allocation. We have seen years upon years of underinvestment, and that has taken its toll. We're constantly paying catch up, be it wastewater, be it our roads maintenance, be it public transport. However, we have to look at new solutions, and that's when I talk about the three-pronged approach I am setting out to do. And
I'm sure those prongs will come to feature in other questions. John, it's over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Minister, for coming along, and Declan, congratulations on your new role. I haven't seen you officially in the committee since.
Thank you, John.
But yes, it's good to see you both. Minister, as you said, it's just over a year since you've been in post, and you've had plenty of time now to get your feet under the table. As the Chair has said, you've had as a department, the highest ever amount, whether that be resource or capital given. And I know you've waxed lyrical about the serial underfunding. I think in over 134 written questions, that was a response that members received. That being said, out of the £1.55 billion a year, can you just outline as Minister what directives you've given to both your Permanent Secretary and your divisional heads to make efficiency savings internally? And can you give a quantum on that figure in terms of the work that's been done to maximise efficiency savings in the department and also to streamline the different divisions within your organisation for maximum output?
So I think that, I have outlined, I suppose, kind of the key priority areas. We've talked about them this morning in terms of where we direct the funding that has been available to us. When we look at the need for NI Water, what they need in terms of their capital allocations, what TransLink need in terms of its capital allocations, our road network needs 1.6 billion, I think the Barton report quoted, to adequately maintain our entire road network, which is 26,000 kilometres of road. That in itself is more than the entire, or the equivalent to the entire capital budget. So I think that outlines the challenges that we face. We all have a responsibility to find efficiencies, and we're continually doing that within the department. I mentioned earlier how we were able to reallocate 2.5 million yesterday because of looking at efficiencies and looking at where we have maybe some savings that we can then prioritise into those areas of need. So that is a continual piece of work that I work with very closely with officials. Indeed, for the financial year ahead, we are looking very, very closely at the budget to see where we can make further efficiencies, because I think whilst, and I'm sure we'll get into the roads issue because I know how critical it is. You only have to do a quick Google search and see that the same headlines have been coming up for the last 10 years. This isn't something that has just arisen in 2026. In fact, you could just change the name of the minister or the year on the thing, and it's the exact same headlines. Is that something that we just say, well, we accept it? No, and that's what I have decided to do, to take a different approach. So we've the draft road maintenance strategy about looking how we do that differently. It's about looking at our budget now for not just this year ahead, but hopefully for in a multi-year budget, that we can target investment so that we're looking after the assets we have, so that we are building that resilience in our road network, that we're building sustainability, and we're seeing longer term solutions, so that we are not in this constant cycle of reactionary approach to dealing with the road network. There, of course, are things that are beyond our control, one being the weather, and I think whilst people have tried to dismiss that, that is an absolute fact. You only have to look at the issues that are being raised across England, Scotland, Wales, and across this island. This is impacting all jurisdictions, not just here. We are not sitting in a bubble where our roads are deteriorating. But that's why I think, for me, it means that we need to see action, and we need to look at how can we do things differently so that we are getting ahead of this within the budget that we have.
Okay, thank you. You point to that redirection of the 2+X million internally, but I didn't really hear any specific work that's been done internally within the divisions to try and maximise efficiencies and output. I don't know whether the Department Secretary wants to come in on the work that's going on. I mean, I think it is critical that each department does this work and obviously highlights the work that is being done. Could you maybe elaborate more on?
Yeah, John, just to maybe amplify a bit more what Minister says about the challenge we face. If you take, for example, the utility regulator, what they're saying that Northern Ireland Water need for this year, 431 million. If you take the Barton report, which Minister referred to, back in 2019, talked about 145 million. That figure's now 195 million. If you talk about TransLink need around 300 million. At a quick calculation now, you're up to nearly £1 billion pound before we start. So that does challenge us as a department. And what we've done about it is proactively looked at how we can be more efficient. You will know, you'll have heard at the committee in previous visits, that we've looked at transformation bids and been successful on those, one being for the sustainable drainage and one being for planning. We're looking at other avenues as well where we can be more transformative. We had a senior civil servants session last Thursday where the challenge was put out, and it was a show and tell where we demonstrated some of our efficiency programmes that we were taking forward, but also put the challenge out that we put it into the DNA of the department to look to be more efficient. And we're meeting with Minister in a couple of weeks' time to look at how we can manage the indicative budget we have going into next year with all the challenges that I've just outlined. So we are live to it. We are doing a lot of work to make sure we position ourselves. The funding only goes so far, so it means we have to make difficult decisions. But when you look at those challenges from the outset, you can see what we're up against.
Thanks, Declan. And look, I do appreciate the financial situation that we're in. I don't think anyone's unaware of it, and I think it's incumbent on us to make sure that work is being done. And look, we all agree that every pound is a prisoner in that respect. In light of that, Minister, can you just outline to date how much money has been spent through the pursuit of potentially installing Irish language signage at Grand Central Station, both in terms of scoping exercises and any associated legal costs?
So you'll know that there's obviously an ongoing legal challenge, so we haven't moved ahead.
Any indication of what that's cost to date?
Of the legal challenge? Yeah. No, we wouldn't have those figures to date.
So could you maybe outline how much has been spent to date?
So, as you'll know, there's been no physical infrastructure or signage being erected to date. So at this point in time, it's my understanding that there'll have been nothing yet. But I think it would be remiss for me to go into the detail of this because there's a live court case ongoing, and I hope to see a positive outcome to that. I think that particularly something as a focal point like Grand Central Station, the largest integrated transport hub on this island, something that we should be very, very proud of for everyone across our communities. I think that it would be fantastic to see it reflective of the diverse community we have here.
I think it's undoubtedly a wonderful asset. I just think as at a time when we agree that every pound's a prisoner, we need to be strategic and we need to rationalise and prioritise the spend that we have and the limited spend that we have, and anything at all that can be set aside and would be worthwhile in terms of ultimate delivery for the department. So I think that was my concern around it. Moving on to the roads maintenance strategy. When the last time you were in, you talked about the Ards and North Down pilots and about how this roads maintenance strategy would be almost transformational in terms of what we see and on our roads. You talked about the £40 million investment. Can you just outline where that's going to be spent, how it's going to be spent, how we're going to get the biggest bang for our buck, and what tangible benefits will constituents see on the back of the roads maintenance strategy when it comes to actually delivering on this? How much of a difference do you think it will make?
Yeah, well, I mean, and I looked at the chair as a representative in Ards and Northdown. Certainly the feedback that we have got from people across that area was positive, and I think it was an area that, you know, I had been involved in a German debates prior to this that would have highlighted significant issues with their road network. So I think we have seen good outcomes in relation to that, which has then fed into the broader strategy. I mean, as I've outlined before, our budget situation isn't dramatically changing by any stretch, but how we maximise what we have is what I'm keen to do. So we all will share the frustration of over, you know, I suppose through the limited service policy that's been in place for over 15 years, is that officials contractors and staff can go out and fix one pothole because it meets the criteria, but there's 3 or 4 around it that just don't meet it, so they aren't able to fix it. This is looking at bigger patching areas to try and build that resilience and make longer term solutions, because inevitably, and we've all seen this, they are having to come back time and time again to fix the remaining ones as they then meet the criteria. So that in itself, I think, is one way of looking at it in very simple terms, to say that we want to ensure that where we are doing repairs, that they are long lasting, that they are sustainable, and they are tackling a bigger stretch of area rather than I suppose being inefficient and calling on requiring staff to go out time and time again. I think it's about looking at, you know, we talked about the digital strategy or the digital survey, and that's about getting us information in real time. So not only looking at where the worst defects are in the immediate time, but also looking at where's likely to need input or investment in the time ahead, and that includes our entire network, so road, footpaths, etc. And all of that too.
Yes,
so,
sir, if I could draw you, John, you've got time for one quick last question and one quick
Thanks, Minister.
response from the Minister.
15 potential areas, but I suppose I wanted to focus in on planning finally. We've heard, whether that be from Mobile UK, whether that be from the renewable sector, whether that be from foreign and direct investment or anything else, that quite simply the planning process is not fit for purpose when it comes to delivering for investment in Northern Ireland. Companies are going elsewhere. What is going to be done to streamline the process and make us open for business when it comes to investment in what are key infrastructural projects?
Yeah, so I think it's more about what is being done than what is going to be done. We've already, a lot of that work is already underway, as members will be aware, and I'm sure you have had briefings on the Plan and Improvement Programme and the work that the department has been doing. I mean, I can't understate the importance of an efficient and an effective planning system, and that's why the Plan and Improvement Programme was commenced, because we recognise that I think we're coming up to the 11th year of planning being devolved to councils. That there's definitely room for improvement. Officials have been working in close collaboration with the 11 councils, working with committee members and planners within the councils as well, to identify what the key issues were and continue to be, and then I suppose most importantly identify the solutions. So you'll be aware we recently launched the trainee planner programme, and that's about trying to encourage new people into the system who can, on that pathway, almost like an apprenticeship, then it helps to bode well for retention, because staffing is probably the biggest challenge we have in our planning system, and I'm sure everyone around this table can look to examples of that in their own areas and the challenges that presents. It's also about looking at kind of strengthening good practice across all areas, so that we can look at where good practice occurs, what works well in some areas and what doesn't work so well, and give planning committees and planners an opportunity to address that and find ways forward, as well as addressing the broader legislative and
your time frame for that, Minister, for completion, roughly? Time frame for that?
Well, we're into phase 2 now, so we'll keep the committee informed as we go through that process, but we are already seeing some positive outcomes, and it will take some time to bed in.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, John. Peter.
Thank you, Chair. And it feels like I'm in the crystal maze back
You're
in the day.
speed dating.
I'm gonna rattle through here as quickly as I can. You mentioned, Minister, road safety there. Can we get a bit of an update in terms of the legislative changes regarding drunk driving, drink driving, drug driving, and the highway code changes that came in GB around 4 years ago. I sit on the policing board, and I know it's something that they're quite interested in. So can we get a look at those legislative changes that your department's been looking at?
Yeah, so in relation to drink driving and as part of my department's commitments to road safety under the strategy, officials are currently reviewing the current drink drive legislative framework, and it is a very complex area. I'm expecting a briefing from officials in relation to this in terms of drink drive limits and where we go in relation to that. I think it's a very important area of work. I mentioned earlier the anti-drug driving campaign that we recently launched. I suppose in collaboration as well with the Road Safety Partnership, we're seeing this as a key causation factor in many collisions as well. I suppose as we get more information, when I get the briefing from officials as to what direction we intend to go, but it is something we are actively looking at present.
Because I know that it was discussed last year in policing board. Do we have any sort of time frame as to what that's going to look like then, regarding potential changes? If you're waiting for a briefing,
I don't at the minute, but I can try and get more information even in terms of when I can expect to hear more. But I know that's fairly imminent when I'm due to hear back from officials. I don't know definitely.
It's that very point, Minister. Officials will be briefing the Minister in the not too distant future on proposals, and we'll come back to you on that.
In terms of the highway code, that came in 4 years ago in GB. I think it's for turns and prioritisation for cyclists and pedestrians. We haven't had that. I think in a recent response to me, it said that there were resourcing issues. Have we overcame those? Are we going to try to get that change implemented?
So at this time, I don't think we've progressed any further in relation to that. We're obviously working across a number of different areas, but I know it has been raised by some organisations as well, in particularly some of the cycling groups that I've met with. So we can, we'll keeping it under review, but at this time I don't have an updated timeline for that.
And then secondly, keeping within the road safety angle, medical fitness to drive. I know that you had met with people fairly recently. I think it's fair to say they're a bit disappointed in terms of the policy ask that they've been asking and the work that they've been asking to be achieved within the policy side of medical fitness to drive. Have you any updates as to where your current thinking is with it, or departmentally where the thinking is?
So I'm not aware of what the concern is. Maybe I'm happy to speak to you about that further. But I suppose just what I said, something that I was very keen to work on. I mean, given my own background in health and dealing with people across the board in terms of maybe different medical needs, I recognise the importance of this, and I think it's something we did a recent campaign with Anne Flanagan, who talked about even just something as simple as getting her eyes tested, and then realising she needed glasses and how that made a real impact on her driving. That was around raising awareness. However, I've met with the Health Minister in relation to this, and officials across both health and my department have been working collaboratively on this in terms of how we move ahead. So it's something I take very, very seriously, and I think I constantly talk about how I think there's a broad range of issues out there where we can continually narrow these gaps in terms of road safety. So that's in doing lots of things that will have an accumulative effect, ensuring that more and more people are safer on our roads.
Okay. Turning to the Trustport reclassification bill. I had met with the Harbour, obviously they're in my constituency recently, and they wanted me to say that they're very grateful for your input and officials' input. I know it was a very good committee session that we'd had. I remember Sean Kerr was speaking at that, and I thought I was very reassured in terms of the work that they're doing. Are we still confident that we can get that delivered within this mandate? Yeah, absolutely. This is two key pieces of legislation that I am planning to take forward, and I know from my engagement with the ports that this is something that's very important to them. The policy recommendations in relation to the review of Trustports was endorsed by the Executive in November 2025, so I'm hoping that I'll be in a position to introduce the Ports Bill to the Assembly now in the coming weeks as we approach the spring. BRT2 was in the media recently. Obviously I've got it in my constituency as well, going from East to West Belfast. The date's been pushed back to 2033. No, not the anticipated date, I think, is 2033. Can you give any information as to why that specific date, and can we still try to get it achieved by 2030?
Just to be clear on that, there hasn't been any delays. There's been a miscommunication, I think, or misinterpretation of the dates provided. The 2033 date was based on the entire project. Yeah. So you'll know that in the early last year, I think it was one of the first statements I gave to the Assembly, we'd announced the plans for the next phase of that. That remains on track. And we are now at a position of we hope to be in construction for that aspect of it next year. But you'll also know that there was further work to look at the Carridoff Glengormley aspect of it. So the 2033 date was saying that we could potentially have all of that completed. Obviously, that is dependent on budgets, and I outlined that when I made the statement to the Assembly that like everything we do is critical to it. But essentially, where we are at in terms of the timeframes we had set out for BRT2, we are on track and anticipating that those will move as planned.
And then, obviously, and this is my last question, I think. Do you still have time, Chair?
You do.
Okay. The active travel lobby, you mentioned the active travel piece. They were in just last week, and I think there is a bit of concern in terms of the accountancy exercise that's taken place in terms of the active travel spend. They maintain that it's still roughly around the same as it always has been, and it's been kind of inflated from an accountancy perspective. That's certainly backed up by the audit office as well. And now I think it's articulated around 50 million is being spent, but that's predominantly streetlights and things like that. I don't think we're going to change opinions today in terms of all this. So I'm just wondering, what can you do, Minister, to reassure them that active travel is still a major focus from your department? Because I think there's a bit of concern that it's not as much as it should be.
I mean, and as I outlined in my opening remarks, I think we've work to do. I think we're sitting around about 5 to 6% of the overall transport budget on active travel, but we are continually working towards that 10% commitment that was set out by the Climate Change Act. And I think that we have to do this through in a very balanced way. You know, that we're continually developing improved active travel networks, but also maintaining the existing infrastructure. And you mentioned street lighting. I mean, I think for us to put in, particularly where you're putting in new or upgrading active travel networks, we have to ensure that they're safe and they're fit for purpose. So that forms part of that work. So that is not to overinflate the figures. That is because it is required as part of the work that we're doing. So, I mean, I really want to emphasise my commitment to ensuring that we do continually work towards meeting our requirement of the 10% target. We have good plans, and I think even the work we've been doing with councils through you know, for the greenways and things like that show the commitment remains and that we are pushing ahead with this. And I think there's some really exciting opportunities coming forward.
And Peter, just to add very quickly, I mean, to give you a perspective, from 2023 to 2025, it's gone up from 12 million to 18 million. That's dedicated active travel spend. And as Minister rightly says, the overall pictures are closer to 50 million. So we are putting resources towards it.
Okay. One more cheeky one. Do I still have time?
You've got 30 seconds.
Okay, just a very quick
question and response.
I'd met with the Railway Industry Association last week, and we were speaking at their conference as well. Yeah. And I was remarking to them, if we don't hear a great deal in terms of the Island Rail Review at the minute, certainly in the Assembly, are things still going well in regards to that?
Yeah, and I was at the conference, as you know, and thought it was absolutely fantastic when you see, for the first time, they've brought it to Ireland, and there's over 300 attendees from right across the board, so it was absolutely fantastic. Yes, I mean, you know that we recently announced the prioritisation of that, and there is a lot of work ongoing. I ring-fenced £1 million within the budget for Translink to continue the feasibility studies, but I've also set out in the multi-year budget what will be required to continue to deliver on those commitments. We work closely with our counterparts in the South. In fact, I met with Minister Canny while at the conference last week to discuss what's coming ahead, particularly around the enterprise fleet replacement. So, you know, I think it's a really exciting time. Yes, it's very ambitious. There's no doubt about that. But, you know, we've seen what can be achieved through that collaboration, both with our counterparts in the South and with the likes of SAUPB, as well as the Shared Island Fund and the Union Connectivity Fund. So I think we have to continue to push that momentum. Certainly from my perspective, we're pressing ahead with what we have set out to do, and we continue to seek the investment needed to deliver this.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister and Declan, for coming in today. We're always glad to see you at the committee. You're always welcome here as well. But don't leave it as long next time, oh Benwell. Minister,
third time in a year, Stephen, so.
Minister, what would you say to many of my constituents who believe that you, as a Sinn Féin minister, may be deliberately running down the state of our roads to potentially make a constitutional point?
I think that's absolutely untrue. I mean, I think it's actually quite a ludicrous claim to make, and I think that, you know, as I've said earlier, the issues that we are seeing with our roads at the minute are not something that have only just happened. These have been reported on year after year. I mean, I had a wee look back, just as I said, over the previous years, January, February, the same headlines, the same issues being raised, and that some of them were going back as far as 2016. So that's not to take away from this issue. This is absolutely a really, really important issue, particularly for me. But I mean, I'm a road user too, as my family, my friends, our communities. I want to see that our road network is fit for purpose. That is why we have been working, and Declan will testify this, we've been working extremely hard to find how we can maximise the very limited resource we have to deal with the issues that we're seeing. As I said earlier on, I mean, since December, I've been able to obtain an additional 40 million, as recent as yesterday, just over 40 million actually, to invest into our road maintenance, to try and tackle the challenges we have. But the reality is that years and years of underinvestment have led us to this point, and it's very difficult to get ahead of that without having to react to it in the way that we have been. So it's not ideal, and certainly where I would like to be is that we can front load investment. You know, now as we're heading into, I suppose, the next financial year, coming into a bit of drier weather, I certainly would prefer and want to prioritise investment so that we can bring our road network up to an acceptable and an adequate standard for all road users, so that we're not seeing this rapid deterioration in the winter next year.
Okay, the roads, you know, they've never been in a worse state under your watch. They blame the Brits approach.
But I mean, you've said they've never been in a worse state. Can I just check? I mean, is that a fact?
That is fact, and my constituents verify that day and daily to me, and they will continue to do so.
So we're comparing that with every other year?
Yes. Minister, hold on. At least let him finish.
No, but I mean, I just think it's important to be accurate.
There's a crisis on our roads, Minister, and I'm not sure if you're aware of that. There's a pothole pandemic. I'm not sure if you have a cure, and we do need solid action plans. The time people are fed up and frustrated with strategies and you know, and so on. We do need to see action. One of your foundations last year, you mentioned in the committee, was better roads. Mm-hmm. We have a roads crisis, and you know, the public liability claims, for example, back that up. You've already mentioned almost 50,000 defects in the past 3 months alone. If you're back here this time next year, Minister, what will have changed?
Well, as I've repeatedly outlined to the committee, to the Assembly, through all the various modes of correspondence and in debates, I've set out very clearly what we are doing and what we intend to do in the time ahead. The committee know the strategy has only been launched in recent months, and that is setting out the plan for the time ahead. Mm-hmm. That is looking at a different way of how we tackle the challenges on our road. So for me, that's an action. That's something that I'm making a commitment to do. That's not talking about what we do 10 years down the line. In addition to that, it's about securing investment. And I think there's an important question to be asked here. The executive budget, as your colleagues in the executive will be acutely aware of, I mean, we're facing a significant overspend from some of the departments around the executive table, because who also recognise there's been years and years of underinvestment. I'm striving to live within my budget, but also to try and maximise the budget I have so that we can deal with these issues. They're critically important to me. And you asked me, am I aware? Of course I'm aware. I travel the roads every single day. Mm-hmm. I hear it. I have a constituency office like everybody here. I'm not immune to this, and I'm very keen that we get ahead of this and we deal with it. And that is through investment. So I hope that I can get the support of executive colleagues to get maximise the investment I have and going forward, so that we can get ahead of this, because without that it's going to be very difficult. But that's not a challenge that I will shy away from. I'm determined to find ways to improve this.
The department obviously tests vehicles to high standards. People right across right across Northern Ireland question, given the standards they're expected, the poor standard of our roads. You mentioned the strategy, and I've read the strategy. It doesn't take very long. It's 18 pages, but there's only 10 pages of content when you take out the graphics and photographs and the cover pages. There's no mention, for example, of the role of utility companies and the disruption that they take on our roads in terms of poor reinstatement and so on. And it is very vague and light on action points. You've mentioned the 11 years now of limited service. We've seen the Audit Office report only 2 years ago, a series of key recommendations around that. So, Minister, the public are tired of excuses and they do want action, so we'll be keen to hear, just to close out that point.
So just to reiterate my previous points, I'm not making excuses. I'm actually outlining the actions I've taken and what I intend to take in the time ahead. You mentioned utility companies. I know this is a major bugbear for everybody. It's an issue that we hear time and time again. There are recommendations from the audit report in terms of how to deal with that as well. And we do carry out inspections in relation to that. Where a repair fails to meet the standard, officials will request that it's rectified and subjected to further inspection. So there are always issues where utility companies reopen newly resurfaced roads. There are protocols in place that planned works are notified, the department are notified well in advance, but there are other examples where emergency works are required, and that's dealt with, I suppose, differently. But we certainly strive to ensure that those are followed up on, and will continue to do that. I think that's something that more and more we're hearing, and I think it's something that we are very aware of.
Stephen, can I just make a very quick point? I've been in post for 5 years, and part of that is overseeing the budget. We've never been able to fully fund the road network to the level we've needed to. That's been a challenge for the 5 years I've been in post. The roads have always been in a state that need to be improved. That's a fact. We know that. We live it. We drive it. And it's been overlaid and complicated by the recent weather. The recent weather is atrocious, has been in the last couple of years. I've never seen it, and you've seen the statistics for 149 years. So you combine all of that together, it's been a challenge, but it's been like that for 5 years.
It has never been bigger, but it's just, we need to get beyond the stick and plaster approach. It's welcome that 2.5 million was found behind the back of the sofa the night before the committee meeting. That's welcome, but we do need to see more longer term measures going forward. I'll move on to the next point, Chair, if that's okay. Just around, it is an important principle and it cannot be overlooked, around the billboard issue. August 23, your department wrote to Sinn Féin Councillor Mathers. November 25, there was 2 further letters written to the Sinn Féin office. You've mentioned your constituency office already. In Uri, it was written to that address. I believe you're very familiar with that. If you say there is no Sinn Féin billboard, then why did your department write to your office over those last number of years, and were they incorrect to do so?
So this was discussed in the debate also. I'm aware of the correspondence that was sent out from the local section office. It's not something I signed off on or would have been aware of at the time. That was a decision taken, and that was in relation to a billboard that had a Sinn Féin logo on it. As I have said on repeat, that is no longer there.
Was that illegal?
We have had those conversations before. The department have assessed it, and they had said they referred it as an illegal billboard. But what I am saying to you is that correspondence issued, the billboard has been removed.
Okay. Do you accept, Minister, the principle around all of this? It's not about what it says on the messaging. It is the fact that the largest party in government, your role is over planning within the minister. You're the minister responsible for planning, and it does appear to many out there that it is one rule for me and another for thee. Do you accept that point, Minister? And on reflection, would you have acted quicker in hindsight?
So I don't accept the point that it's one rule for me and one rule for anybody else.
You can see how people see that.
But if you let me finish, the department took action, and that was dealt with. In relation to your second question, sorry, what did you say?
Well, there's a point really that the integrity of the planning system has been compromised. Do you accept that?
So as the member will be aware, planning is dealt with through the council, and that's a matter for council. And also, I suppose you talked about taking action. But in terms of issues, I mean, we could talk about this all day. I don't think this is what people out there want to see us talking about. One poster. I'm not underestimating that people may have issues, but what I'm saying is there are mechanisms in place, and those protocols were followed both by officials in the department, as have been outlined, as have been evidenced through the correspondence, and I think that's the proper approach, and it shouldn't be different for no matter what the issue is or where it is.
Okay. Final question, Stephen, quick one.
Chair. Climate legislation, over the last year particularly, it's been brought to the fore in terms of the impact around that. We've seen that with the A5, the Enniskillen bypass, some of the A1 junction improvement work, for example. What account has you or your department made around the impact on future infrastructure projects going forward, and do you believe, in light of the impact that it is having and could have, that is it time now to to make more affordable and realistic targets around that.
So as the member will know, the A5 hearing has been critical to how we move forward on a number of infrastructure projects. I also feel that this isn't something just relevant to roads projects. I think this is something that people will be looking at right across the board. So for me, I think, it's critical that we get a successful outcome in the appeal, and that's what I am ensuring that we are working very, very hard towards, that we provide the strongest possible case, and I've outlined this time and time again in the Assembly. As you know, that case is ongoing. In fact, there's a hearing today, and we're working closely with colleagues in DERA as well in relation to that. So, yes, there's been an impact in terms of the ruling, but I feel that there are things that we can do to overcome that, and I hope to see a positive outcome so that we can move ahead and get on with the delivery of all of these schemes, but in particular the A5, given the critical nature of it and given particularly what we've seen in the last 48 hours.
Okay, thanks Minister, thanks Declan, thanks Chair.
Militia.
Fáilte róh alag agus Declan. These are both very, very welcome here, Minister and Declan. And tongue in cheek, just I know that the 430,000 that was allocated to the flood alleviation scheme in Castledairg, my hometown, that was done in order to welcome me onto this committee. But I say, on a more serious note, Minister, and I know you've really alluded to it, the very fact that we lost another life on the A5, a road that I travel on day and daily. And I'd like to express my deepest sympathy in that to the family of the deceased. And I know too, Minister, because we're waiting on judgment on a legal case and that you're not in a position to make any comment on it. Other than, can I ask you if you still commit and that you reiterate your support to the realisation of this project that is so vital to all of us who live in the northwest in particular, but I'm sure to the benefit of all of Ireland as well. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, it was extremely disappointing, the ruling last June. However, we have been working night and day, particularly the team that are involved, and across with DERA as well, because we recognise just how crucial this is. Yes, for economic growth, for connectivity, for communities, and all of those which are very, very important. But most importantly is about saving lives, and I've met some of the families that have been impacted, and I know just the strength of the feeling, particularly across the northwest and across the stretch of the A5. We've worked also with our colleagues in the south and the A5N2 committee that has been set up across the councils, in a cross-border approach to hoping to progress the A5. So I mean, I want to reiterate in the strongest possible terms my commitment to seeing the delivery of the A5 as soon as possible. We shouldn't be in this situation, because of a number of objectors. I think this road should be delivered, but I will not rest until we get this over the line. And I have said to the Assembly before that should we not get an outcome that we hope for in the courts, we are also looking at contingency plans around that. Thank you, Minister. Minister, just moving on to another area, just that where you've been able to unlock sort of capacity for over 5,000 homes, which is welcome in relation to Northern Ireland Water. Then, can you give more detail on how much Northern Ireland Water has borrowed against their assets and how this impacts on their sustainability? Yeah. So, as you mentioned, I think for the 2025-26 for this financial year. The capital allocation for NI Water was 370 million, 152 million to their resource budget. That's over £500 million of public money for water and sewer services, and almost 92% of what NI Water had initially requested. That's not to underestimate the challenges presented, in relation to that, and I don't want to underestimate that. We have worked closely with NI Water to find innovative ways of again, maximising the budget they have to continually deliver for people, but it also represents the highest level of public money that NI Water have received since coming into existence 2007. So I hope that shows the commitment we have in relation to that. In terms of borrowing, Declan, maybe if you come in a wee bit on that.
I mean, there's a loan arrangement in place for Northern Ireland Water that goes back to 2007. So as we sit at the moment, they've borrowed in around £1 billion through the department, through DOF. So that's the loan arrangement that's in place, and they pay back on the interest on that.
Thank you. Minister, could you speak to the importance of putting on the All-Ireland Rail Review and the recent announcement that the prioritisation of the All-Ireland Rail Review?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, we've seen a significant appetite. I mean, there's a huge demand for increased rail services and something that will service our entire island. We have seen the success of the Dublin to Belfast Enterprise hourly services, and that's something I think that we continue to build on the momentum of it. The prioritisation strategy, I was really pleased to be able to outline the plans for the future development of the rail network across the north. Particularly when we look at enhancements on the existing Belfast to Dublin line, Lisburn to Antrim, Portadown Armagh, the Portadown to Derry line, and as with the electrification of the Belfast to Dublin line as well. So, I mean, I think that all bodes very well for the future. As I said earlier, we continue to work very closely with our counterparts in the south to make sure that we realise the delivery of this and that we can keep progress moving, looking at what investment we can secure. And I suppose it also highlights the importance of being able to agree a multi-year budget, because within that multi-year budget I have looked at what will be needed and what my bids would be in relation to ensuring that we can build on progress in relation to this.
I'd just like to comment, Minister, that I have no doubt whatsoever of your commitment to road and rail transport here on the island in every respect. And I doubt very much, that given that they have a superior health outcomes in the Republic of Ireland and that they have a superior educational system, that anyone would accuse the ministers in the north of Ireland for health or for education as being subversive, because that's the implication of a statement was made to you today. So thank you again, Minister, for your answers.
Thank you, Melissa. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. Good to see you. Minister, I suppose I want to start by also reiterating the thanks to the DFI staff, certainly the ones on the ground. Obviously, South Down, many incidents of flooding over the years, and the response is always good, and also the arm's length bodies. Also, just again, some of the things like the 20 mile an hour speed limits. I mean, there's a lot of good work that goes on, but unfortunately the way the world will maybe concentrate on some of the things that are difficult, so just to bear that in mind. Minister, I spoke yesterday in the chamber, and your colleague referenced me as right, and just committee members not scrutinising maybe as well arm's length bodies as well we should, and so I'm taking that in the round going, well, unfortunately you're the next person up, so I'm going to have to be a bit more scrutinising here. Minister, when it comes to NI Water, I mean, literally arm's length body A comes in and says, we need this amount to make this work, okay? Arm's length body C or B comes along and says, we independently verify that they need this money to work. Number C comes along and says, we can't invest, the economy is going to be affected without doing this, but then E comes along, yourselves, and very often says, we give NI Water all the money that they need. Meanwhile, we're seeing the infrastructure with NI Water deteriorating to the point, we've touched on the economics, I'm touching the economics, we'll come on to the environment in a second, but what are we to do? What is the issue? How do we progress this?
So I think, well, one of the challenges is that we aren't able to give them everything that they ask for. So that in itself is a challenge, and I've spoken to that earlier as well. We work very closely, if we use NI Water as the example, we do work very closely with them, as we do across the other departments, particularly if we're looking at housing, and we work with the housing supply strategy to find solutions. So I talked about some of the examples where we have been able to achieve innovative solutions that will deliver, albeit maybe not at the level that we would hope, but will deliver and continue to make progress in relation to this for reduced cost. So I'll give the Newry example of 26 million, which will unlock capacity for 400 properties. We know that that's not the long-term solution. However, will it make sure that we can continue to build and progress? Absolutely it will. And we always have to encourage our arm's length bodies to live within their budget. You talked about scrutiny of ALBs as well. I mean, you know that last year at the end of the financial year, and NI Water had indicated they were potentially going to overspend on their resource budget, and we had very close working with them. We had numerous meetings and engagements trying and ensure that they could live within their budget. But it got to the point that then I initiated a forensic investigation, and that may have not bore a huge amount of results in terms of what were savings. There were some recommendations that we'd have seen efficiencies, but it also meant that me, in my responsibility as minister, was looking to ensure that the money that we were allocated was being spent in the right way, and actually that their position was reflective of the reality. We again talk about the weather. I mean, heavy rainfall has a massive impact on budgets for the likes of NI Water, because that impacts then on the capacity of their systems. I'm sure everyone will have been dealing with people over the last couple of weeks, particularly on the aftermath of Storm Chandra, who are impacted because the infrastructure has been over capacity, and then it has caused flooding or sewerage issues and things like that. So there's lots of things there, I think, that present challenges, some within our control, some or outside of our control. But for me, it's very much about looking at, I have a budget. I mean, we know it's not enough to do what needs to be done. We've talked about roads and the budget that's required to do it on itself. That's my entire capital budget. So I have to make difficult decisions, but that requires working very closely with the likes of NI Water to say, right, how can we maximise what we have? How do we get the best out of what we have? Yes, it still falls short. Yes, there's still going to be issues that cannot be addressed, but we have to try and, I suppose on a majority type view, that we do as much as we can with what we have.
And Minister's right on that, and Andrew, just to clarify a point, I mean, I'll not get into the person X, person Y, whatever that was, ABCs, but Northern Ireland Water were set a figure by the utility regulator, but Northern Ireland Water themselves wouldn't have had the capacity to deliver that. So at the start of the financial year, they came to us with their operating plan to say we could only deliver 405 million. We gave them 370. That's where the 90% comes from. So it's Northern Ireland Water themselves, not us. It's Northern Ireland Water themselves saying we don't have the capacity to deliver all the utility regulators asked us to do.
Sticking with NI Water, moving on to matters of the environment. The independent review of environmental governance concluded that NI Water's SOAP arrangement had weakened the case for sufficient investment in our water infrastructure and incentivises NI Water to provide us other areas to potential penalties or harsher. It's recommended that DAERA should exit the SOAP arrangement, and the Minister has a set of clear direction in this regard. Will you support DAERA's efforts in helping ensure NI Water is no longer given the free pass to pollute?
So I have met with the Minister on this and looked at how we could do this in a way that reflects the reality of the situation. I think it is important that we adhere to our responsibilities in terms of the environment, and that includes NI Water and the responsibilities they have. I welcome the OEP's investigation. I think it's an important piece of work that will help us to move forward and hopefully find solutions also to dealing with these issues. But I think it's important that we have to be cognizant of the challenges to actually achieving that, thank you, because of the budgetary issue, that there's no two ways of saying that. So it's harder and harder for the likes of NI Water to meet those requirements, but they absolutely have to strive to ensure that they do that. So I think that there's, I've made clear to the DAERA Minister just kind of my view in terms of how we move forward in this. I do agree that we have to get to a point where, and I know that SORPI has to be removed. I don't dispute that, but I suppose how we do that and taking into account of, I suppose for me the issue is that if we are then increasing fines and then that impacts on the overall budget, then that again makes it harder to meet the requirements, if that makes sense. So that is why I am looking at, I talk about the three-pronged approach because regardless, I suppose, of what maybe others have commented today, I don't believe that one aspect of that is the solution. I think there's an accumulative impact here. It's looking at different solutions. So the SUDS bill is one part of that. Looking at developer contributions is another part of that. The most important part, I suppose, is obtaining an adequate level of investment and continuing to work with executive colleagues in relation to that. But I think this is something, I mean, our wastewater infrastructure underpins everything we're doing across the executive. So, you know, in terms of our house building targets, in terms of what we want to do in health, and if you were building new facilities, etc., etc., etc. So there's an interest across the executive that we get this resolved. It's not easy, but I think that just continuing that collaborative work will help to make good progress.
Thank you, Minister. I appreciate all that, but it does seem, again, we are standing on the cusp of seeing what's going on in Lough Neagh. We're seeing what's happening in Belfast Lough. And I'm just, you know, it's how do you reconcile a commitment environmentally to protect these things? But again, with the greatest respect, hearing that there is going to be a delay in Sorpy and an inability to fund NI wastewater to a point where it can be environmentally, you know, protecting of the environment.
So the Sorpy arrangement is the remit of the DAERA Minister, so any delay in relation to that isn't something that is within my remit. But I do think that there's work we can do across departments to actually tackle this and improve it. I mean, these issues are well rehearsed. I said at the start when I was speaking with the Chair that we've seen a 85% rise in the costs during PC21. I mean, that's huge. So what we set out to do when PC21 was agreed is almost double what the costings were at that time. Our budgets haven't doubled. You know, our ability to meet that requirement hasn't dramatically changed. So that in itself presents a challenge, and that's why we've had to look at what else we can be doing to ensure that we're meeting our environmental responsibilities. I mean, I think the issues around Lough Neagh and Belfast Lough that you've alluded to there absolutely have to be addressed. So that requires innovative thinking, you know, unless we are going to get the funding. There was a commitment made in a new decade, new approach around this as well, and it hasn't materialised in the way that we would have hoped. So unless we see a massive uplift in our entire executive's budget, I can't see me getting the money anytime soon to do all that needs to be doing. But does that mean you sit in your hands? No, it doesn't. And I think, you know, we have a good working relationship with the DAERA Minister on this. I think he understands the situation we're in, but also I respect that he has a responsibility to adhere to the requirements that he has to. So I think there's more work to do, but we'll continue to do that.
Andrew, that's your time up. Do you want a yes, no? Come on.
Well, just what do you say? Well,
I know your time's
I've got a
different
timer as well here, Chair.
I know you have, but I've got a time over here, and you're running 2.5 minutes behind me.
What do you say to the farmers, Minister? I mean, I get, you know, pictures from farmers who feel like they're being held to a different standard whenever they see wastewater going into water courses compared to the NI water that isn't with Sorpy. There's a real feel of injustice there. So again, what do you say to the farmers in that regard?
Answer there, Minister.
Sorry?
A pretty brief answer.
Oh, sorry. No. Well, look. I mean, I think there's a responsibility in all of us to take action in relation to this. Regarding that issue, I mean, that falls to the DAERA Minister in terms of Sorpy and water. But I have outlined, I suppose, quite clearly the actions that we're taking to try and deal with this. I don't think we have everything available to us. Money's the key issue here, which makes it. I feel like I'm operating with one hand tied behind my back in many cases. But I'm not willing to just accept that, and we're constantly trying to find other ways of dealing with that. And I think that means working across the board with everybody.
Chair, sorry.
Nope, it's fine. Thanks, Andrew. Harry.
Thank you very much, Chair. Minister, I know we've talked a lot about roads. We've heard a lot about plans, strategies, roadmaps. I mean, I think the public just want the roads in a fit state to drive on. We have to MOT our motor vehicles. I think we could nearly do with MOTing our roads at present time. We all pay our road fund licence, and I know that goes to England, but we still expect our roads to be in a fit state. I'm just wondering, Minister, you've been in post now a year, and the next year, can we turn the roads around and make them an example that people could look at and say, wow, what a great job we've done in that year?
Well, that's what I'd hope, Harry, and I think that's what I've said out here, that we can start to see a real difference in it. I'm not under any illusion that this is something that can be very quickly turned. I gave the example how this has been an issue year on year. But we've actually taken action to try and find a way forward. I'm not aware of any previous minister who took a different approach than what we are trying to embed now. I said, I've said out very clearly with officials where I want to go in terms of budget prioritisation once we know what we will have. So, look, it's definitely not without its challenges. And you mentioned road tax, and I think it's important to clarify that point because it's something that's raised with me all the time. Where does our road tax go? It goes to Westminster, who are ultimately responsible for ensuring that they pay us or fund us adequately. They aren't doing that. They have admitted that, as has this Assembly agreed that. So I think it's incumbent on all of us to make that case to Westminster. We can't continue to allow a British government who are we pay our taxes to, we pay our road taxes to, but we don't get the return for that. And this is what we say. It's not just unique to my department. I'm sure people who have colleagues in the executive also feel the strain of this. So, I think there's a very strong case to be made. I know certainly the Finance Minister has been making that case to Treasury and continues to make it. We are seeing significant overspends in health and education. And look, I don't underestimate the challenges there. But I think we have to kind of wake up and see what the reality is here of why we are in the situation we are. We continually look to see what efficiencies can be made, what innovative approaches we can take to deal with this. But we have to get the adequate investment to put into our roads or put into our existing assets so that we can do more and do that to the standard that all of the public should expect.
And Minister, would you say we'll have the machinery, we'll have the manpower, we'll have the skills?
So one of the challenges, and I have referenced this before, is around our workforce, and we have a number of vacancies right across the department. We are looking at a new recruitment approach to this and hope to see this start. I think it's in March potentially. That's right. One of the first recruitment campaigns will be kicking off, and that's there will be a focus particularly on industrial staff who I suppose are predominantly populate our roads teams. That's absolutely critical. And I think we all hear people talking about the DOE days, and you would have seen people out more. So we are taking action to try and address that. Like any area, I suppose even across government, we see challenges in terms of recruitment. That's not something that's just unique to roads. It's not just unique to my department. So we're always looking at other ways and how we can attract new staff to come into the department, but most importantly to retain. I talked about planning earlier on as well, and that's another example.
And you did mention record number of defects reported. So would that also mean a record number of claims?
So, undoubtedly in this as well, recorded that we've seen an upward trend for many years in terms of compensation claims. There's a number of factors that have contributed to that. I think, yes, we've seen deterioration on roads, we've seen change in weather patterns, we've seen more and more people actually now are aware of that they can claim. So I think that is something that we can, factor in terms of that.
Do we have any examples, any numbers for like say one pothole and the amount of claims? Is there any particular ones that you would have had?
I don't think it's recorded in that way.
We've more of global figures, and as Minister rightly says, there's been a 5-year average in and around a fairly constant figure, but that has peaked in the last year. So in the last 12 months the figure has increased, but we haven't got figures specifically for each pothole.
And moving into spring, summer, autumn, Minister, that's a time when the repairs can be done, so the time comes winter next year that things should be levelled and sealed up. Maybe is that your plan?
Yeah, well that's where I would like to be. I mentioned earlier on about front loading. I think that's something I'm very keen to do. Obviously I don't know what my budget is at this stage. We have a draft budget, and again there'll be challenges within that, but we have already initiated discussions within the department to kind of look at this in closer detail to see how we can get ahead of this and plan ahead for the year.
Like the public, Minister, just want to get from A to B and get there safely. You have been a great advocate of road safety, and that's great. The roads at present, and I know you'll admit it yourself, are in a dangerous state. What about lining? There's lots of roads you come up to junctions and the lines aren't particularly clear or they're disappeared. Will that be on your plan for?
Well, that's part of the road maintenance work anyway. Yeah. So teams are working across. I know certainly, and I mean, I'm aware of how they work across divisions and their squads, and they kind of go into areas and do clusters. That's certainly what staff have been telling me for many years, even just at a constituency level. So, you know, but if there are issues particularly, I would encourage everybody to report them in so that we are aware of them at the earliest possible stage. But routine inspections, that's when they normally pick those up.
Yeah, keeping people safe is the main thing. Can I move on to vesting? Is that okay, Chair? Or in terms of vesting lands, what would you call a reasonable time frame to make payment? I know, and I'm saying that when I think of the A5, and there's lots of land has been vested, and maybe farmers not able to access outbuildings, not able to use their lands, and time just goes on. And I mean, I'm asking this because, as you know, the Balnahinch bypass is due to be done soon, and A24. So I would like to just know, will payment be made reasonable times?
So we always strive to do that in the most reasonable time. And, you know, one of the things that I found, you've given some examples there, is that engagement between landowners and the department, and then LPS are also obviously involved because they are responsible for assessing the value of the land, and that can present delays for various reasons. So certainly from our perspective, we're keen, because that enables the progress of what we're trying to do, whether it's a road scheme or what it may be. So we certainly always strive to move that at pace. But sometimes there are factors there that can have impacts. And I suppose what I would always say is just to encourage landowners to, you know, engage as fully as possible with the department on that, so that can happen.
And in terms of like where we're at present, looking at everything, how do you see the A24, the Balnahinch bypass?
Yeah, so and you were in attendance for the announcement last March, and officials are moving forward on the development of the business case and the procurement of the scheme. So they are in the process of meeting with landowners, updating surveys and reviewing the relevant documents, because obviously, as you know, there's been a passage of time since this was first initiated. So that will all contribute to the preparation of the procurement documentation. As I've said earlier, I mean, the impact of the AFI ruling is something that we have to take into consideration for this scheme and for all schemes. But I hope that, you know, we can move through this as quickly as possible.
Okay. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Harry. Justin.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome to committee, Minister and Declan. Minister, last week I did a social media post on Facebook, and I sought the identification of potholes in our constituency near Armagh, and overnight 500 people responded with 300 locations identified where there are major potholes in our constituency of near Armagh. And you know, driving the same roads as I do, that they're actually quite dangerous, and some people are actually fearful about leaving their homes given the scale of the potholes and the depth of them, and the moon-like surface that we've discussed many times before, that it feels like driving on the roads of Newry and South Armagh, and every location, Katy, Clady, Newtown, Margaret Hill, Crosswood, Mullaban, Slay, Newry City, Armagh City, the roads are in a dangerously dire state, Minister. I think you'll agree. And it's also quite worrying that in answer to a question that I asked of you, you said that there were 6,281 potholes in Armagh Bridge and in Newry Morning Down, and 18,000 across the north in total. That means more than your constituency sits in the middle of council areas where more than a third of the potholes in the north now exist. Minister, you can see how that doesn't necessarily reflect positively.
Well, I am aware, I suppose, and I think as we both represent the same constituency, my colleagues, my constituency office gets a lot of the same reports that you will. I mean, I think that the issues that we've outlined, I think everyone here has outlined today, are reflective across the north. I mean, your colleague was a minister, so she will also have had the same issues, and I've seen that documented in the media over those years. So the challenges remain the same. What I have set out is what I'm trying to do to deal with that. I mean, we can't ignore the fact that it's actually difficult for teams to get out to repair them to the standard required because of the weather too, which has an impact. That's not taken away from the issue. I think the demand to deal with the defects across we work in divisions is hugely challenging. We have a limited number of staff and a limited budget, which is why I've been continually trying to find ways to increase that budget. We referenced the 2.5 million that we were able to reallocate within the department yesterday. Southern Division, I think the recognition of the scale of the problem is reflected in terms of the allocation they've been received from the 7.85. I think it was 3.3 million has been allocated to Southern Division. So, we have seen, I'm sure you've noticed, even particularly around Newry, some of the recent schemes that are underway or completed as well. So those schemes would not have been able to happen had we not been able to get additional investment. So I'm delighted to be able to move that on. That's not taken away from the challenge that remains, and we're continually working on that. And that's why the reports are so important. So it enables teams to identify the most high priority defects and get to them as quickly as possible. But as you've said, and as we all know, the numbers of those are particularly high, and they are working through them as quickly as possible.
The 500 respondents to that social media post identifying pothole locations, I've obviously written to you on that. And will you commit to responding to me, give me a timeline for where they will be repaired? And that list will have to actually be updated, because every day goes by, I'm getting more and more reports, a deluge of reports every single day about potholes which are causing disturbance to drivers and danger to drivers alike. As Positive Minister, you mentioned road safety as a priority for you. Where are you on legislating for e-scooters?
So there is legislation in place in relation to e-scooters. E-scooters are illegal to be used on our roads. So that's already in place.
And have you identified any safety concerns in relation to e-scooters?
So, I think there's growing concern in relation to the use of e-scooters and people using them on public roads, but the fact is that it's illegal to use them on public roads.
Okay. Are you aware of any health and safety issues in relation to Belfast Grand Central Station, as reported by certain members of staff?
Not specifically. That would be operational for Translink. So, unless they have been reporting them to Translink, but not directly to me. Okay.
Water and wastewater infrastructure obviously is a major impediment and barrier to housing, where we're in the midst of a housing crisis, and meanwhile we can't build houses. Last year there were 36,000 new homes built in the south. In the north there were a mere 1,400 houses built. Now, if you're pro-rallying that means there were one house for every 146 homes, or 146 people built in the south, one house for every 1,347 people in the north built, which in the south about 25 times the amount of houses in the south, right? And it's great to hear your colleagues praising the Irish government in this committee, so that's positive to hear your Sinn Féin colleagues. So 9 times more houses per capita built in the south than in the north, and you've now brought forward your 3-pronged approach. Have you talked to industry? Have you talked to the construction industry, and have you talked to developers about the actual positive impact of your 3-pronged approach and how successful that will actually hit the ground in terms of allowing progress, allowing homes to be built, and to allow economic development, which is really
we probably need to cross-reference some of the figures, because the figures I have is that by the end of September last year, there were 4,211 new dwellings completed, 5,549 new starts. So we are building houses. The point that you made there, that we're not able to build houses, is inaccurate. Yes, there are challenges. We've outlined them very clearly here. But we are building houses, and we're continuing to find ways to make sure that we keep that progress going. I regularly engage with the sector. I'm attending CAF event now in a couple of weeks, and we engage with them extensively, as we do across the board in relation to many other sectors involved in relation to construction. And I always welcome kind of advice and ideas around how we can work collaboratively to tackle these issues. I mean, the 3-pronged approach is about trying to find solutions. I've said this on repeat. I know that this isn't the silver bullet. It isn't going to solve every single problem we have. But will it enable progress? Absolutely, it will. And that's why I really hope that the committee can continue to work with me to ensure that we keep that progress moving.
It's brilliant that you welcome ideas, and one brilliant idea coming from Pascal Taggart and your party side is the Newry Next idea in relation to building 6,000 new homes in Newry. Banbridge corridor, which will provide homes to local people first and will increase its capacity to be a commuter town for Belfast and Dublin, which already is organically. What resource has your department, I've asked you just previously, what resource has your department provided to scope that idea out, proposal out properly, and which is essentially a plan on a plate for your executive?
Well, I mean, that's your opinion. I suppose we're looking at the report, and it's important that we do look at that properly so that we can properly analyse what exactly it would mean. I mean, you referenced it there being a commuter town. My understanding of what a commuter town is that people from other areas would be coming to live in Uri to enable them to travel to work. That means people coming from the south of Ireland because they can't actually afford a house in the south, and they can buy one cheaper in the north to enable them to travel back to well, that's essentially what the report says. So, you know, that doesn't say to me that actually focuses on the primary needs of people living locally in terms of enabling them to secure a house. However, there are benefits, I think, that can be achieved in that, and that's why we're looking at the report to see what exactly it means and what that would mean for the future.
Minister, I'm disappointed that you're trying to poo-poo an idea which is around creating new homes.
No, I'm not, and don't misinterpret. But what I'm saying is, I have a responsibility to look at this instead of looking at a headline and saying this is brilliant for Newry. I have to ensure that what we're doing actually is good for the people that live in those areas, but also for on a strategic view, is good for the whole of this society. So there's always going to be pros and cons, and we have to look at that very closely to ensure that we are doing things for the right reasons.
My pure ambition is around providing houses for Newry people first, and
I need to understand if that report actually is doing that. So,
Minister, I'm going to finish off his question. Go ahead,
Newry to thrive, and it's surrounding areas to thrive. Minister, in terms of rail transport, it's fantastic, and the All Ireland Rail Review has been wonderfully positive in terms of the 40% uplift which you've mentioned, which to your credit you deserve enormous praise for, and previous ministers, which obviously the SDLP Minister for Infrastructure launched that All Ireland Rail Review with her counterpart in the South. Obviously 40% uplift has caused, it's a victim of its own success, so you're hopefully scoping out the potential for further parking provision in Newry train station. And as a little side issue on behalf of my 4-year-old, since Brexit, the Enterprise train hasn't come north. The Enterprise train has not come north, I believe. Can you sort it out, please? We want to see.
Well, it's not my steam train, so I think we've answered this as a question before. But I mean, just to come back on the point of the early service, absolutely, it's a huge success. And I think for anybody that travels it, whether it's for commuting, whether it's for matches or whatever it may be, even just a day out in Dublin or Belfast, it can be hard to get a seat. I mean, that's why I think that the progress on the enterprise fleet replacement will be also critically important. That will ensure greater capacity on trains as well as upgrading the train set that we have. So I mean, I think there's lots of really good things happening, and we need to keep momentum behind that. Money is key, but certainly that's where I want to ensure that we prioritise that.
That's great. Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Justin. That is time, and I give you a little bit extra, and I'm trying to be fair and equitable to everybody. Minister, it's now you're 12 minutes over time, but it is one of your colleagues who's got the last questions. So I'm hoping for some.
I'll run through this.
Some really
quickly.
Tough and incisive ones, Cahill.
I thank the member for raising Newry and Armagh, and obviously numbers have been contacted at the rest of the roads. But Minister, just in all my time, there's never been a Minister for Solutions in the Assembly. That's not one of the ministries, but thank you very much for providing some of the answers today. Just want to pick up on some of the points. The Chair raised an interesting point in terms of, and we've all got it in terms of young people get on the property ladder and everything else, but there's a number of factors. So from a DFI point of view, I want to talk about the Plan Improvement Programme and the planning process in terms of the success of that so far, and what more can we do to try and move that along. And I'm conscious also the responsibility of local authority, but how we marry it all up and move that, because that's the only part we can do in terms of making the department work itself, and our role in scrutiny is in terms of planning itself. So just a bit on the Plan Improvement Programme and how we go forward. Yeah.
So I mean, as I've said earlier, there's been a huge amount of work done, and I want to pay credit to both our own officials, but also the work of the councils to not only identify the challenges, but also to find solutions. So we have introduced the validation checklist, and from kind of initial feedback, it's been working well. And again, that's about ensuring we're front loading planning so that we can streamline the process for people going through. We know that there's been challenges and delays and hold-ups within the system, so that in itself I think is a really positive way of ensuring that we do that. I've talked earlier about the trainee programme, and I think that's a good way of getting more people into our planning system, but as they go through their training, they're upskilling and having an opportunity to work in the system and really embed themselves. So also we're looking at, I suppose, the policy work and legislative changes around that, and I think that there's some really good opportunities. But I think it's also important to recognise just how important planning is, and that's why we have dedicated such a work programme to this, because we know it's really important. I think when planning was devolved to councils in 2015, it was a huge step, and whilst there have been challenges and there have been difficulties, I think largely it has been positive, and we don't always hear about the positives. We've more work to do, and I think this is a bit of a reset and a review to look at what do we do, what are the issues, and how do we address them, and that's certainly where we're at.
No, and just following on from that, clearly the whole issue, and I have some sympathy in terms of the housing and the demand of everything, because it's across the AFC in terms of social housing and all of those things. Certainly there's an issue for us in connection, and we get it every day in terms of sewage infrastructure, but it's one part of it, and it's important. And I know that you're engaged with your executive colleagues and that. The other one, and obviously you've been in the chamber a number of times now in terms of the roads issues. So my question about is really along the strategy, the road street maintenance strategy, where we're at now, what do you hope to achieve, and is there a timeline then for an update on that going forward in the future? Yeah.
Yeah, well, look, you know the consultation recently finished, and I think it does the feedback has been largely positive. I'm waiting on the report on it, and members will receive that also. It only ended the end of January, so we are looking at, the officials are looking at that in greater detail, and then they'll publish the report. So we aim to finalise the strategy fairly soon. I think we need to get this in place to enable us to kind of make budgetary decisions as well, and that will all be part of that process. But I think it certainly augurs well for the future. I feel that it is a different approach. It takes into account the challenges we've seen over the last 10 years, particularly, and finds ways of improving and enhancing our road network within the budget that we have available to us. And I think that there will be positive benefits to that, but that will require close working with yourselves as well, I think, too, in terms of how we move that forward.
And just now a subject, and I know it's close to your heart too, because you visited the local community transport network group, and the work that we recognise the work they do, and obviously at times it's challenging. So in terms of going forward, can you highlight how we can support them more and going forward, and their role and the role you see actually for them going forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was really pleased to be able to fully fund the community transport network this year. It was an increase of 26% in their funding to 5.54 million across all the providers. And I've been out with many of the providers, including in my own area of Newrymourne and in Armagh as well on a number of occasions. So we see firsthand the impact that service has. I've said this time and time again, at the heart of everything we do, not just in government, but in terms of my role in infrastructure, is people. So that has to be at the forefront of my mind whenever I'm making decisions about what the impact is on people and how we're actually improving their lives. And I think community transport is one shining example of how we have been able to do that, because it's providing people with independence, it's providing people with connection, and also, particularly in rural areas, enabling them to get out and do things that they may not have been able to do, and certainly from the people that I've met would not. That has a knock-on impact then, I think, in terms of other areas in government, in terms of people's health. If people are able to get out and socialise and live a more fuller life, then that has benefits across their own physical and mental health as well. So not everything we do is about building roads and physical infrastructure. It's actually about how it impacts people, and I think that's a really good example for a relatively small investment, what we can do, and I look forward to continuing that and working closely with community transport.
Yeah, and just finally, and obviously probably on behalf of the committee, your legislative framework, I mean you're happy enough with it in terms of your timelines and everything else?
Yeah, so
there are only 12 months left.
I know I think the committee are due to get more evidence on the SUDS bill on the 18th of March, is that right? So that I hope will progress well. I referenced earlier the ports bill. I hope that will be introduced into the Assembly shortly too. And then there's obviously secondary legislation that we are working through. I mentioned the Reservoirs Act, and I hope that the engagement with officials and other information provided will help the committee with their deliberations, because it can't understate just how critical this is. This is a public safety issue, and I think that it's important that we move it along, as well as some of the other areas of work around school bus safety and other pieces of legislation that we're taking forward. So we'll continue to keep the committee updated on all of those, and continue to work closely with you, and really value your input.
Thank you, Cathal, and well done coming in under time. Minister, I will thank you in a second. I have one final question for you. This is like chair's privilege nearly. And I'm just going to quote back something you said on the way through. It's about the A5. You said your department has contingencies if you lose obviously the appeal. I mean, in broad brush terms, what is your department considering around that?
So I don't think it's right to go into detail, but I have said from the very, very outset that, we continue to look at what other options are available to us, so that if we were unsuccessful in appeal, we have to ensure that this road progresses. So that's something I have been on record as saying and remain committed to do.
In broad brush terms, those because you did.
Well, look, I mean, there's a lot of work continuing in relation to all of these things. At the minute, the focus is clearly the appeal. And I hope that we can get a successful outcome, but I think it's important that we are looking at other options to ensure that we can get this road delivered and make sure that no more lives are lost, particularly given what we've seen over the last 48 hours.
Sounds like you're teasing me, Minister, but I'll leave it there in terms of that contingencies and.
Well, I'm not saying anything I haven't said before.
What might happen in the future, Minister? Thank you so much for coming today. Thank you for spending an additional 20 minutes longer than planned with the committee. I certainly did my best from up here to try and make sure everyone got a fair hearing and got questions. I think if you come back maybe in 3 weeks' time, that would be great. We'll have another battery.
We'll have 10 debates in between time.
Another battery of questions for you, but I think it's of real value to see ministers at committee, because this is what we do, and obviously this is what we do every week, and you are running a department every week. So on behalf of the committee, I want to thank you for coming here.
Very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
Okay, folks. My proposal at this point is to just take a break because most of us have moved for the last 2 hours. So we pause the committee proceedings there and come back in maybe 5 or 10 minutes, if that's okay. Here we go. Welcome back to the Infrastructure Committee. And we want to proceed with the rest of the business for today. There's no more oral briefings, but we have a fair amount just still to get through. We are at Chairperson's business. And the only thing I have for this week is that I've been contacted regarding some signage for diplomatic car parking bays. And rather than Cathal looks at me with wild abandonment, rather than actually deal with this, I've asked the Council to send through some information regarding it, and that will get on the pack for next week so everyone can have a look at it. So we'll probably come back to that next week. Item 5 are the draft minutes. They are at page 34. Our members agreed that these are a true and accurate reflection of the meeting of the 18th of February. If they are, I will sign them. Our members agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. Okay, matters arising. Page 7 of table papers, there is the draft response to the Committee for Finance on the budget 26, 29, 30. Page 12 to 25 of table papers, we have responses from DFI, Northern Ireland Water, Translink and Waterways Ireland. A draft response has been prepared by committee staff reflecting the issues that have been considered in response to the committee's request for written evidence around the budget. you will see that. If members are minded to amend the response, then I think we can probably hold this for a week. If members are content with that, that's fine. I think, can we send, or does it need to go quicker than that, Michael?
Chair, it's just the requirements of the Committee for Finance. They'll be expecting to receive it this week, if that's okay.
That's fine. Do members have any views on the response that's been put together by committee staff, or are we content? Content? Okay. Committee's content to send that back. Then, Michael? Yep. Page 26 of table papers, we have the clerk's brief on the active travel delivery plan, which was touched on today. We did hear evidence on that. I think the only thing I would want to pick up on that one, if I can find my table papers, is on page 27. There is a section there that says suggestions agreed by members of the committee on the 18th of February. Leaves it fairly open, but it did say that there was consideration of an active travel champion or independent chair of the stakeholder forum. It'd be my view that I'm happy to just put this on the record, and maybe if that could be reflected in what we decide to send back. But I'm not sure I'd want another champion at 75 grand in Northern Ireland. I'd be quite happy with an independent chair of the stakeholder forum. I think they probably would too. But perhaps we could reflect that if members are content with that. Harry?
I was just going to say, Chair, would maybe be better with a pothole champion.
Pothole champion. Spotting or fixing, Harry? Fixing.
And would it be Pothole Harry or Pothole Peter?
That's a good question.
Well, just suggest the name. Yeah, okay.
Perhaps any members of the public who are watching today could suggest a
name,
suitable synonym for said person. Michael, are we content with? Do we have do you want any more on that, or?
That's fine, Chair. It's whether members have any other amendments or things to add from what's been captured there.
That's all I've got. Other members happy enough? Okay, fine.
I'll forward that to the department if members are agreed.
Yep. That is fine. And the members are agreed to send on those comments to the department. That takes us on to core. At 44, we have the correspondence memo. I will take you through a few things. If any members have anything else to raise out of correspondence, I will obviously take those at the end before we note the additional. At page 33, we have a response from the Minister to the committee request for further information on the department's assessment of the unfunded pay pressure at 2.1 million. I just want to seek committee agreement to write back to the Minister to ask for details of the high priority schemes mentioned in her response and the Enhanced Road Recovery Fund, if members are happy enough with that. Agreed. Okay. At page 61, we have core from the committee for the DERA committee on a concurrent meeting to seek evidence from Northern Ireland Water on the Loch Ness Action Plan and the Statutory Consultee Forum. The DERA chair, Robbie, had come back to me and said that DERA are happy to lead on this. I am content with that. It's up to the committee whether or not they are content with that to let DERA lead on it. They are working on a Monday morning, which I know will suit us all really, really well. For members watching, that's sarcasm. But it'll be problematic to land this, but it will need landed and it'll need to be court. Are members happy enough to allow DERA to lead on this and set it up?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Chair, if members are content, tentatively the Senate might be available on at 10 a.m. on the 20th of April. And if members are content for the committee staff for agriculture to go ahead and arrange that for that time and date, unless members want to think about it for a bit in terms of commitments that morning.
What date was that?
It'll be the 20th of April.
What day is that? Monday?
At 10 a.m. So Monday morning. I'm sure you won't want to miss your party meetings.
So the question will be, look, it's probably a question for another day. However, the DAERA, whoever's coordinating it from DAERA side will know the pressure on diaries that we have, because we all attend other committees and different committees. It'll be up to, I suppose, DAERA to coordinate diaries, get a date, get a time that we can be assured is court from both sides. There needs to be enough of us there and enough of DAERA there to actually hold this. So look, we'll keep members informed as a progress around that if members are content with that.
Chair, just I take it, maybe you already are doing this. I mean, I'm content that you engage with the chair of DAERA and keep us informed in terms of the engagement and what's the process and how best forward. I don't mean meeting as a group, but it needs to be. There's some evidence there of what they're trying to do, but it needs to be. It's not just a meeting for meeting's sake. So I'm happy enough for you to
Michael?
have that.
Yes, so there are two issues that that committee has raised. One is the role of NI Water in the Lough Neagh recovery plan, because there's only really one mention of NI Water, and that's in an advisory capacity and awareness raising rather than actual actions, and I think there's concern on that committee. As they just want to ask what they're doing, and the other one was around planning, the Planning Statutory Consultative Forum, which we haven't had before this committee, certainly not in my time, and they were wanting to ask some questions of that around planning in agricultural areas, rural areas.
No, I've read it there. I'm happy enough. You know, as long as there's something meaningful out of it.
Yeah, no, I understand. Look, that's a context, and I think probably from the DAERA committee's perspective, this will be a very useful session for them because they won't have the level of varies to question witnesses. That's a context. So, look, I think we got agreement on that one. Regardless, Cal, just as an FYI, we'll keep the committee informed as any progress in that around dates and when that lands.
Thank you.
Okay, page 132 is a core from TransLink offering to provide oral evidence to the committee in respect of the draft budget 26 to 30. So there may be changes to the draft budget. It's really up to us to decide whether we want to take TransLink up on that offer and schedule oral evidence accordingly. I suppose the tension there is we have a budget that we're just not too sure about, and it will take up a session. I have no strong views on it, so it's really for the committee to decide whether it wants to schedule in oral evidence from TransLink or is content with just, you know, we have stuff in today, obviously, that's in our packs. Whether we say to them just give us more detail in terms of written evidence, it's a committee decision. I'll take views.
Happy with the written evidence, I think, at this stage.
I think so at this stage.
Would you agree to accept written evidence from TransLink and not bring them in?
Do we normally bring them in at this stage when it comes to the budget side of things? The question, I'm trying to think the last time they were in.
Probably before. We probably bring them in before.
We've heard quite a bit from NI Water. I'm not sure, but we have had them in fairly recently.
Yeah. So
we've had them in the last 3 months.
The new chief
but not with the new
not on
chief,
this,
so, yeah, not on this, and not with the new chief executive.
We had them in October.
Yep.
Okay. The time we get a date, then, Chair, with the new chief executive likely to be in place potentially, it might be worth.
I'd say so. Yeah.
To hear.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could probably put them in for, I don't know. Well, this is the end of we're going into April next week. I mean, March next week. We could probably put them in for April.
Easter.
Post Easter. It's up to committee. Are you happy enough with that?
I think they're one of the biggest arm's length bodies. It would be good. That would be.
They have no money left, apparently.
That would be 6 months since we've had the last chief executive. I think it would be advantageous.
Look, let's put them in for April then. Let's ask them what to do. Yeah, have enough.
Thanks.
Okay. Yep. Item 8 is the budget sustainability. I'll pause there. Has anyone else got anything on core they want to raise? Apologies for that. I'll take Justin and then John. Justin?
Just very quickly, can we write to the Minister, you know, it's fantastic that additional monies have been announced for roads and obviously repair of potholes and resurfacing works. Can we ask the Minister what amount of that money actually can be spent because of potentially resourcing constraints, personnel-wise, both in consultancy and on the ground? The road service, obviously staff who are worked to the pen of their collar and wouldn't likely have their jobs having to start to rectify the issues that are out there. But can we ask the Minister to what extent will that money actually be spent because of said challenges around staffing resources?
We absolutely can, Justin. I'm just going to get a bit of advice here. It would need to be tied into core, or that would be AOB, Michael, or can we just? I mean, it's probably off. Is it? We probably tie it into the monitoring run response, I guess, if we want to tie it into something that's come back, or like.
Yes, because that's kind of in a response to the Minister's evidence.
Yeah.
We'll find somewhere to put it in.
Okay, so Justin, this is just in relation to Michael. We've got a good summary there, but really in relation to there has been, we reflected this yesterday. I spoke on this yesterday and Monday. I think about nearly 40 million now, and my understanding is that all needs to be spent by the end of March.
Yeah.
Now, if you go to the department's website, there are 20 press releases. It's nearly worth saying. Kimmins announces, boom, 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 boom. And I said it slightly facetiously, I welcome all spending on trying to solve this issue in Northern Ireland. I think probably my view, and I think what Justin has just reflected in, is there's an issue of what strategic element is there to that spend. And then also, Justin, you had another particular point in terms of capacity to spend, is that right? Yeah.
Which is slightly different, Chair, because this money has to be spent by that period.
It does, yeah.
So if Justin's asked a slightly different question, what won't be spent?
No, I'm asking what capacity is there to spend the money?
Yeah. So will it all be, is the capacity there, will it be spent? I suspect, I shouldn't answer the Minister's question, but I think I feel that. But
it's just the way you phrase the question, that's all.
Are you happy enough with that if we send it that way, Justin?
I don't mind asking the question.
What capacity is there within road service resources to spend
the money?
Welcome as it is. Very welcome as it is.
Fine. No problems. You got that one, John?
Thanks, Chair. It's just in relation to the departmental response on Storm Shandray.
Yep.
And
57.
I believe it was myself and a couple of other members raised this. So I suppose where I was coming from at the time was the difficulty as a local rep and for constituents to get real-time communication on key issues. I've no doubt, and it's alluded to in the letter, about the thousands ongoing incidents, the 300 obstructions on the network, the drainage, the fallen trees, the sandbags that were required. And there was obviously high-level multi-agency tactical coordination groups going on, but in real time on the ground, and we're seeing this more and more with storms, people, including ourselves, just can't get the information. Where are roads closed? Which trees have fallen? Which one has been reported and which one hasn't? When I phone, I don't know about other members, when you phone the emergency line after hours with the DFI to report any of the issues as an elected rep, invariably you can't get through whenever we are seeing these storms hit and the worst of the implications. So I don't know who's going to coordinate that communication, but when I went on to my two local council areas, for example, in the days of the worst affected parts of the storm, there had been no posts at all for 2 days, except to say that the leisure centre had been closed and that the storm was on the way. So they weren't telling people where the sandbags were, they weren't telling people how to respond. I'm sure there may well have been sandbags, but people didn't know where to get them until afterwards. So there's good work being done, but it's how it's communicated and how to keep people up to date in real time. If we accept, which I think we all do, these are going to happen more and more regularly, I think there is a proper need for a coordinated communication strategy and who's going to lead it. There are divisional Facebook pages within the department, there are council Facebook pages and there are PSNI pages, but none of them were effectively being coordinated to communicate with the public in real time, and that was the original point I was trying to get to. How we best use communication to keep the public updated and to provide safety during these storms.
Yeah, well, that's fine. Look, Carl, I'll finish one. Look, I mean, the department's response is, we did quite well, and it could have been worse. It's a summary of that letter. I think your point is sound, John. Actually, I think there's a lot of resources that the department put in place that really did help in a range of ways. Your issues around communication, and I think that's a legitimate one to pull back on, Cahill.
Well, I'm just thinking, Chair, there was groups set up. Council were part of it and everything else. I know
resilience groups.
I know. I couldn't just think of the resilience groups. So you're right, John. I mean, if there's not, where sometimes you used to be able to get council back on. I'm not saying is DFA, whoever the lead is on that, to coordinate that. But you're right. In some cases,
It may well, Cathal, through the
You know,
chair.
when they started out, you know, when they formed the resilience groups, they were
Yes.
quickly, so.
But it may well be being done well somewhere, but it's certainly not being done well in
No,
other
100%, but
areas.
it should be right across the board, to
And
be
then
fair.
what you find is elected reps are stepping in to try and
Yeah, yeah.
provide that real-time communication to say where to avoid and what's going on. But I think at the very basic level, there should be an instant communication strategy that steps in, and who coordinates
Yeah.
that is down to...
And ultimately that bit is the FA, was it not?
So
The
there
head of
are
the
50 regional community resilience groups
Yeah.
in Northern Ireland, and I think along with what John has suggested, let's get a list of these groups amongst other things, and let's see where they fall within our various constituencies. So at least we have a list of it. But I'm content with just the comms piece, where if the committee's agreed to write back and just ask.
No, and like I say, if it's the FA who's responding, you know what I mean? Because there could be through those resilience, if there's 50 of them, there could be somebody there who we don't know who.
Yep.
It's a direct contact there, and then, you know what I mean? That's fair enough, yeah.
Members
That's all
agree?
right, John.
Yep. Happy enough. Anything else coming up from core? Members.
Sorry, you've got to say that.
I was about to say, members agreed to note the rest of the core.
Just to agree to send those 2 letters from Mr. McNulty from the Deputy Chair.
Who, Justin,
Yes.
Oh,
those,
Justin and John.
Yes.
I think we got agreement. Committee happy enough with that?
Enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're happy enough to note the rest? Yep.
Noted.
Okay, item 8 is budget sustainability. And the written evidence that's come in from the department. Page 186 is the sustainability plan and covering letter from Medallo, and at page 188 is the sustainability plan and the plan itself. This provides an overview of the forecasted requirements for the next 5 years, and the department has already indicated that these will be difficult. And obviously, this is in the context of the draft allocations in the draft budget. Look, committee may want to receive oral evidence from departmental officials on the 5-year plan, and on how that's going to impact on spending going forward. So I would suggest we do take oral evidence from the department on this, and we schedule that into the forward work programme. This is an important piece of work. So our members agreed that we bring in departmental officials regarding that. Item 9 is the budget. Much talked about the spring supplementary estimates over the last couple of days on the floor. You will see the written evidence there. We had the spring supplementary estimates debate on Monday. We had the vote on accounts. Then we had the budget bill on Tuesday. Now, the SSE memorandum was received by email from the department on Wednesday the 18th at 7:30. And therefore we could not consider it in advance of the supply resolution debate. The memorandum, however, was dated and signed electronically by the interim Perm Sec on the 5th of February. And had it been provided to committee on that date, it could have been formally considered prior to the debate, which would be normal practice. I would be wanting to seek committee agreement. Certainly I'm drawing committee members' attention to this, and then seeking agreement that we write to the Minister and ask for an explanation as to why this was not permitted, this was not provided to the committee at the time of the memorandum being signed, as it would have let this committee have a look at it before it got to the floor. Members, any views on that, or are we agreed? Agreed. Okay, fine. Okay, so look, just for those watching, the committee will move into closed session for a short period of time. This is just for the committee to consider some legal advice around private car parking companies. It shouldn't take particularly long, but as it's legal advice, I have to seek committee agreement to move into closed session. Are committee agreed? Okay.
For my sins. It's a full-time job.
We're back in open session. I'm going to just ask the clerk what decisions were made in closed session, just so we get them on the record.
So just to check, our members agreed that we write to the department to ask about what we're doing about private car parking companies, and that we await the reply from the department on the guidance and prior approval in terms of planning correspondence that we're expecting next week.
Yes, agreed.
Members agreed.
Okay. So I have a few SLs to read out here, folks. There's several pages of them, so you can just sit back and say agreed at various points in time. SL1 is the Parking and Waiting Restrictions Belfast Amendment Order Northern Ireland 2026. At page 159 is the Clerk's Memo. At page 160 is the SL1. At page 163 is the Notice of Intention. At page 164 is the Draft Order, and at page 166 is the map. The purpose of this proposed statutory rule is to prohibit vehicles waiting at any time, loading and unloading not permitted, on a length of the Upper Knockbreda Road, Belfast. The intention is for this length of road to be used as a maintenance lay-by for vehicles used by operatives attending to the traffic signals at this location. However, other vehicles are currently using it for parking. In the absence of the appropriate legislation, enforcement action cannot be carried out against the vehicles that are parked in the lay-by which maintenance vehicles are denied access to, which is required at all times. Vehicles are excepted from prohibition in certain circumstances. The proposed rule is not subject to procedure before the Assembly. The committee noted receipt of the SL1 and the proposed SR at its meeting on the 20th of January, at which point a call for views was published on the Assembly website. The committee's call for views closed on the 10th of February 2026 and received no responses. No specific issues have been identified with the statutory rule as drafted. Are members content with the proposal for the SR? Right. Item 12 is SL1, the Road Races Croft Hill Climb Order Northern Ireland 2026. At page 168 is the Clerk's Memo. At page 169 is the SL1. At page 172 is the Draft Order, and at page 176 is the Circuit Map. The purpose of the proposed SR is to permit the suspension of the right-of-way of traffic on Sunday the 18th of April 2026, being specified times on lengths of a number of roads within Holywood County Down to allow the Thoroughbred Sports Car Club, promoters of the Croft Hill Climb 2026, to run the event.
Sorry, Chair, just Saturday. I think it's Sunday.
Did I? It is Saturday. Yes, indeed. Okay, because what would happen is
turn up on Sunday and the rest of
the road would be closed on the wrong day, and the Thoroughbred Sports Car Club would be very annoyed. I actually think my late uncle actually participated in this hill climb in the 1960s, if it in fact was going on that long. Anyway, the proposed, thank you for that correction, Stephen. The proposed rule is not subject to procedure before the Assembly. The committee noted receipt of the SL1 and proposed SR at its meeting on the 20th of January 2026, at which point a call for views was published on the Assembly website. The committee's call for views closed on the 10th of February and received no responses. No specific issues have been identified with the SR as drafted. Are members content with the proposal for the statutory rule? Right. Item 13 is an SL1, the Waiting Restrictions Cumber Amendment Order Northern Ireland 2026. At page 178 is the Clerk's Memo. At page 179 is the SL1. At page 181 is a Notice of Intention, and at page 182 is the Draft Order. And finally, at page 184 is the map. The purpose of the proposed SR is to prohibit vehicles waiting at any time, loading and unloading not permitted, on a length of Mill Street, Cumber. The prohibition is being introduced to facilitate traffic progression and to enhance road safety at this location. Vehicles are excepted from the prohibition in certain circumstances. The proposed rule is not subject to procedure before the Assembly. The committee noted receipt of the SL1 and proposed SR at its meeting of the 28th of January 2026, at which point a call for views was published on the Assembly website. The committee's call for views closed on the 10th of February 2026 and received no responses. No specific issues have been identified with the SR as drafted. Are members content with the statutory rule? Item 14 is SL1, the Waiting Restrictions Clogher Order Northern Ireland 2026. At page 186 is the Clerk's Memo. At page 187 is the SL1. At page 190 is a Notice of Intention. At page 191 is a draft order, and at page 195 is the map. The purpose of the proposed SR is to prohibit vehicles waiting at any time, loading and unloading permitted on lengths of the Tullybroom Road, Clogher. The prohibition is being introduced following consideration of a request from a developer landowner regarding sightline issues at this location. Vehicles are accepted from the prohibition in certain circumstances. The SR will also revoke and reenact certain existing waiting restrictions in Clogher, thereby consolidating the existing SR rules into one rule. The proposed rule is not subject to procedure before the Assembly. The committee noted receipt of the SL1 and the proposed SR at its meeting on the 28th of January 2026, at which point a call for views was published on the Assembly website. The committee's call for views closed on the 10th of February 2026 and received no responses. No specific issues have been identified with the SRs drafted. Are members content with the proposal for the SR?
Then.
Item 15 is SL1, the Waiting Restrictions Coalisland Order, Northern Ireland 2026. At page 197 is the clerk's memo. At page 198 is the SL1. At page 201 is the Notice of Intention. At page 202 is the draft order. And at page 205 is the map. The purpose of the proposed SR is to prohibit vehicles waiting at any time, loading and unloading permitted on a length of Station Road, Coalisland. The prohibition is being introduced following consideration of representations from a local MLA, local residents and the Northern Ireland Housing Executive. Vehicles are accepted from the prohibition in certain circumstances. The statutory rule will also revoke and reenact certain existing waiting restrictions in Coalisland, thereby consolidating the existing statutory rules into one rule. The proposed rule is not subject to procedure before the Assembly. The committee noted the receipt of the SL1 and proposed statutory rule at its meeting on the 20th of January 2026, at which point a call for views was published on the Assembly website. The committee's call for views closed on the 10th of February and received no responses. No specific issues have been identified with the statutory rule as drafted. Are members content with the proposal for a statutory rule?
Yeah.
Item 16 is SL1, the Road Races Drumhorc Hill Climb Order, Northern Ireland 2026. At page 207 is the clerk's memo. At page 208 is the SL1. At page 211 is the draft order, and at page 215 is the map. I need to seek agreement to note receipt of the SL1 and the proposed SR, which will be published as part of a call for views, to agree also that the SL1 be considered at its meeting of the 18th of March 2026, and indicate whether members are content that a briefing from officials is not required at this stage. Are members content?
My apologies, Chair. I have a meeting.
That's okay, Militia, as long as we can maintain the remaining folk, we are still court and still looking good. Item 17. SL1, the Parking Places Disabled Persons Vehicle Amendment Order, Northern Ireland 2026. At page 217 is the clerk's memo. At page 218 is the SL1. At page 223 is the Notice of Intention, and at page 225 is the draft order. I need to seek committee agreement to note the receipt of the SL1 and the proposed SR, which will be published as part of a call for views, to agree that the SL1 be considered at the meeting on the 25th of March 2026, and to indicate whether you are content that a briefing from officials is not required at this stage. Are members agreed on that? Okay. So the next four proposed SRs relate to the suite of regulations required to implement the graduated driver licence legislation previously announced by the DFI Minister. As these rules are interrelated and subject to members' agreement, they may be taken together and formally noted in the record before committee considers any proposed next steps in relation to the overall package.
Members agreed with that.
Are members agree with that so far?
Yep.
Yep. So we have SL1, the Motorways Traffic Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2026. That is at page 230 is the clerk's memo. At page 231 is the SL1. At page 240 is the explanatory memorandum, and at page 244 are the at page 244 is the draft order. Do I take these singularly, Michael, or can I keep reading?
If you can keep reading, that'd be great.
Item 19 is SL1, the Road Traffic Amendment 2016 Act open brackets, commencement number 4 order, Northern Ireland 2026, and that's the biggest mouthful I've read out so far at this committee. At page 249 is the clerk's memo, at page 251 is the SL1, and at page 256 is a draft order. Item 20 is SL1, the Motor Vehicles Specified Restrictions Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2026. At page 261 is the clerk's memo. At page 263 is the SL1. At page 271 is the explanatory memorandum. At page 276 is the draft order. Item 21, SL1, the Motor Vehicles Driver Licences Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2026. At page 282 is the clerk's memo. At 284 is the SL1. At 292 is the explanatory memorandum. And at page 297 is the draft order. There is a draft press release tabled at on table papers at page 29 there, Michael? Yep, okay, so table papers 29. So I need to seek committee agreement for the following. For the committee to note receipt of the Road Traffic Amendment 2016 Act Commencement Number 4 Order Northern Ireland 2026 SL1 and the proposed SR, which will be published on the Assembly website. For the committee to note the receipt of the Motor Vehicles Driver Licences Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2026 SL1 and the proposed SR, which will be published on the Assembly website. For the committee to note the receipt of the Motor Vehicles Specified Restrictions Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2026 SL1 and the proposed SR, which will be published on the Assembly website. For the committee to note receipt of the Motorways Traffic Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2026 SL1 and the proposed SR, which will be published on the Assembly website.
Just before anyone agrees anything, Chair, just to check that members are content with the press release that was on page 29, if there's any changes or amendments they'd like to make. Happy off.
I need to seek committee agreement that the committee staff publish a call for views on these 4 proposals and promote the call for views through the Assembly's social media channels. I'm going to pause there before reading out the next bullet point. I would suggest that I have had shed loads of correspondence regarding this. So I would encourage members as well to publish that website far and wide so that not just young people can have their views on this for good and for ill. I will continue for committee staff to arrange for publication of the press release in the table papers through the Assembly's comms team in order to encourage stakeholders and interested members of the public to engage in the call for views. And for committee staff to schedule an oral evidence session on the substance of the proposals with the Association of British Insurers and the National Association of Driving Instructors. Everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
I need to seek committee agreement for committee staff to schedule an initial consideration of the proposed SL1s at the committee meeting on the 25th of March 2026. Can I have a committee agreement on that?
Great.
That's the 25th of March, that's 4 weeks. I want to seek the committee's view on whether they wish to ask departmental officials in and schedule a date with them on graduated driver's licenses and any other stakeholders that committee members feel we should be writing to seek views on this item. Any views?
I think, Chair, the officials would be useful to get them in again. There's still a lot of questions around it out there, but also maybe some of the umbrella group around the driving instructor sector.
Yep.
On the agenda will be helpful, I think.
Okay.
They're part of the process.
They're the folks that are going to be delivering it ultimately.
Yep.
Very soon, according to the officials, it's in less than 8 months' time.
It is. It's going to be in 1st of October, I think. Yeah.
It has to be, so we'll call in here if we need to. Yeah.
Yep.
That's agreement for
Yeah.
officials, yeah.
That can't be right. It says Mike as agreed on the 18th of March 2026. I think that's a Back to the Future moment.
Sorry, yes.
We need a DeLorean in here.
What
February. Committee staff had made arrangements for members of the Youth Assembly to provide evidence to the committee on the 25th of March. That'll be really, really useful hearing from young people around us. So that's scheduled in, and we're going to have some Youth Assembly members chatting about this to us on the 25th of March. And then finally, just picking up on the point I made, I have, there has never been an issue, and I've been an MLA for as long as most everyone else here, but there's never been an issue that I've had so much correspondence on, especially around social media. It's gone absolutely boogly. So I would encourage all members to highlight this and get people's views. We're cleared. We have agreement on that. Item 22 is SR 2026-18, the on-street parking amendment order, Northern Ireland 2026. Page 307 is the Business Office Letter, SR 2026-18, the on-street parking amendment order, Northern Ireland 2026. And at page 308 is the made order, and that is the SR, same SR. The rule is not subject to Assembly procedure and is not required to be laid. There have been no changes to policy intent since the SL was considered by the committee of the Infrastructure Committee on the 11th of February. The purpose of the proposed SR is to suspend the charging of tariffs on New Year's Day and St Patrick's Day or days in lieu for vehicles using a parking space within a controlled parking zone. Are members content to note the SR? Yep. Okay. Item 23, Forward Work Programme. Draw members' attention to that on page 311 of your pack. And I need committee agreement to proceed with the evidence sessions as set out. Are committee agreed?
Agreed.
Item 24 is any other business. Do members have any other business they wish to raise? No. Item 25 is the date, time and location of next meeting. I need to seek committee agreement for the next meeting to take place 10 a.m. Wednesday the 4th of March, room 29, Parliament Buildings. Are members agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, and I'll adjourn the meeting there.